Chapter 3697. He's already dead, and you're still putting on an act. Who are you trying to show? The more you act, the more fake you look. I think Princess Yulu is right. You were the mastermind behind all of this. Diluo, what motive do you have? Trapping us in the auction. Don't tell me you really want to join forces with other forces to control the Earth domain. Ah. Seeing Yi Qing Luo still talking to a corpse. Everyone felt that it was ridiculous. That auctioneer was obviously kicked to death by Yi Qing Luo earlier. Even now, he was still putting on an act and chatting with a corpse. Did she treat them as fools? The more Yi Qing Luo acted in this way. On the contrary, they started to suspect Yi Qing Luo even more. That white dragon monster is definitely created by her. Let's catch her first. Then we'll force her to tell us the way to leave the auction. That's right. Catch her first. We can't let her escape. The crowd swarmed forward, intending to catch Yi Qing Luo. At the same time, the crowd suddenly felt a burst of dense and overbearing profound energy suddenly spreading in the air. The vast aura made the entire space felt oppressive. Following that, everyone was shocked by that powerful aura as they retreated a few steps. Swoosh! A slight sound was heard. The crowd saw the auctioneer who was originally lying on the ground like a corpse actually stood up straight, and this vigorous energy was being emitted from his body. Everyone's heart trembled in shock. What was going on? Why? The dead auctioneer suddenly came back to life, and that energy which had far exceeded their imagination. Where did it come from? They had participated in the auction for so many years. This was the first time they found out that the auctioneer who had been hosting the auction for them had such a powerful ability. This profound energy was overbearing and terrifying. It was emitted in the air. Unknowingly, it gave one an extremely oppressive feeling. How did you discover me? The auctioneer's eyes were gloomy, totally different from his amiable expression during the auction. His sentence was obviously directed at Yi Qing Luo. The crowd heard the murderous tone. Their hearts couldn't help but clench together. It made one's heart feel an indescribable oppressive feeling. However, what surprised everyone was, facing the auctioneer, the young lady's expression didn't change in the slightest. It was as if he was not affected by the auctioneer at all. Between his brows, his emotions were extremely faint. Yi Qing Luo met the auctioneer's gaze, and the pink lips under the veil curled into a slight arc. Ever since I saw that monster, I've already guessed it. She paused for a moment, and then waved the devouring flame fan at the tip of her finger. I didn't expect that my guess would actually be correct. The auctioneer's gaze was fixed on the fan in Yi Qing Luo's hands. As his brows sunk, it's that weapon. Yi Qing Luo waved her glower flame fan. That's right, inside. There's my secret weapon. Although it might not be able to kill you, at the very least, it will prevent you from automatically recovering. The glowing fan had been refined by Tang Beiyuan and had devoured Yuin's mental power. Right now, the glowing flame fan was the best weapon to deal with the undead puppets. However, this corpse puppet from the land, it was the auctioneer in front of him, although it was not a finished product. But he was very strong. Her mental strength was also a little taxing on her. The glowing flame fan was unable to deal too much damage to the auctioneer. Chapter 3698. Also, all of you will become food for my war pet, White Fang. The auctioneer opened his arms and spoke in a dignified manner. The corners of his mouth curled up into an evil smile. His figure suddenly moved. In the next instant, he appeared in mid-air, and the white dragon monster that was originally hovering in the sky and roaring from time to time, its huge body moved downwards. Then he took the auctioneer's hand steadily. This scene caused everyone to be dumbfounded. That monster, it was actually the auctioneer's war pet. That was a man-eating monster. Everyone looked at the powerful and completely different auctioneer and suddenly said, You are not from the Earth realm. You, what do you want to do? such a powerful aura, and he could subdue that invulnerable monster. This was definitely not a strength that a person from the Earth realm could have. Facing everyone's shocked expression, the auctioneer obviously enjoyed it. He sat on the head of the white dragon monster and smiled proudly and arrogantly. I used to be from the Earth realm, but now I am not. He chuckled. The black gas in his eyes was like a surging ink spring, surging. Listening to the auctioneer's answer, the fear in everyone's heart increased. Not from the Earth realm now. In other words, the auctioneer had ascended. Now, he had become a person from the heaven realm. So, what happened today was done by the people from the heaven realm. Someone from the heaven realm was ambitious. They wanted to change the dynasty of the Earth realm. This thought flashed across everyone's mind. It made everyone's face turn pale. Ha ha ha, you bunch of stupid people. No one can escape. The auctioneer laughed wildly. Suddenly he stretched out his finger and said proudly, White Fang, go! Devour the souls of these people. Devour their Xian Qi and turn their power into our power. Roar! The dragon's roar was deafening. The white dragon's body, which was hovering in midair, shook violently. It was as if the world had been turned upside down by the white dragon monster. Everyone's face became more and more pale. That monster, the monster is going to attack people again. Quick, run. That monster hasn't moved, so it's waiting for its master. He had seen how terrifying the white dragon monster was. The crowd watched as the white dragon bent down and shook its body. They were so terrified that they almost collapsed to the ground. The white dragon roared, opened its bloody mouth, and rushed towards the people below. It was huge. This mouth could swallow at least 10 people into its stomach. Everyone was horrified. Run. Don't let that monster touch you. Once bitten by a monster. That was the consequence of dying without a complete corpse. Ha ha ha. You can't escape. None of you will be able to escape. The auctioneer was delighted to see the crazed crowd. He loved to watch his prey flee frantically. But no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't escape from the palm of his hand. This feeling was refreshing. The white dragon swooped down. His entire body exuded a murderous aura, as well as a bloody and savage aura. Everyone felt fear from the bottom of their hearts. The white dragon monster was impervious to weapons, water, and fire. They could not fight back against the white dragon. He wanted to escape. However, he was not as fast as the monster. They were like lambs waiting to be slaughtered. It was just a matter of who killed first or later. Everyone panicked in their hearts and fell into despair and chaos. Suddenly, a hurricane swept past. Chapter 36:99. The alluring red glow seemed as though it could dye the entire heaven and earth. A puppet without any spiritual intelligence. What's there to be afraid of? Following that, a young lady's clear and melodious voice rang. And it was at this critical moment. A red figure charged straight towards that white dragon monster. This scene shocked everyone so much that they drew in a cold breath. They couldn't believe what they saw in front of them. Not afraid? That wasn't an ordinary monster. How could they not be afraid? If they were bitten, there was no possibility of survival at all. Looking at the scene of Yi Qing Luo colliding with that monster, everyone's anxious hearts were all tightened into a ball. Isn't it just a dragon? An imitation, and you dare to call it a dragon? The young lady scoffed lightly as her tone was filled with disdain. When the crowd heard this, they were really shocked into a daze. They couldn't believe what their ears had heard. They even wondered if they had heard wrongly. Earlier, the meaning of the young lady's words was, she also had a dragon, and it was a real dragon. Whereas the auctioneer who was sitting on the white dragon monster's back revealed a sinister, cold smile. Young lady, don't joke around. Just based on you, you also have a dragon? A real dragon? He laughed loudly. This dragon of mine is not some imitation, but a real dragon. Yi Qing Luo flipped her leg, and her slender hand flipped. The glower flame fan on her fingertips was like a spark flipping in her palm. Profound energy condensed. Thousands of feet of wind waves surged. Against that white dragon monster, two bursts of energy collided directly, one after another. The sharp, piercing dragon's roar reverberated through the earth. The young lady's expression didn't change at all. Profound energy surged. Heaven and earth rotated. The young lady's brows were like a blooming flower that led to the netherworld, bewitching, bloodthirsty, and alluring. Her lips curled upwards as her palm moved, and a clear voice spilled out from her mouth. "Azure, dragon!" Her voice had just landed. In a split second, the surroundings were covered with a layer of black fog. Lightning flashed and thunder roared. In the thick black fog, there seemed to be something breaking out from the ground. The surrounding air seemed to have condensed into frost. Soon after, as the sky surged, everyone saw a ray of green light. It was like a ray of light that flashed across the darkness. Bit by bit, he pulled out a thin seam. Then, bit by bit, they decorated the entire sky. Soon after, the black mist slowly dispersed to both sides. A sonorous dragon roar, like a shocking momentum, broke through the sky. The moment the dragon's roar rang out, the entire world seemed to have quietened down. All that was left was this extremely long dragon roar. His aura swallowed mountains and rivers, intimidating all directions. That was the moment the dragon roar stopped. From all directions, a series of beastly roars rang out in unison, echoing continuously. That was the sound of 10,000 beasts submitting to him. This movement. The auctioneer's eyes narrowed a little. The expression on his face darkened. Those people who were frozen on the spot and scared out of their wits felt like their hearts were about to jump out of their mouths. The orderly roars of the beasts seemed to be echoing in his ears again and again. The dragon race had appeared. All beasts submit. This was the true description of the dragon race. Roar, roar, roar. The dragon's roars were louder and louder as it kept surging in the sky. A powerful and vast energy spread out in the surroundings. Following that, the sky was filled with thick black fog. Chapter 3700. The huge green dragon descended from the sky with the momentum of 1,000 caddies. The green dragon scales seemed to be adorned with sparkling jewels, sparkling under the thick black fog. The surroundings were filled with gales, howling incessantly under the raging waves. The red-robed young lady stepped on the waves as she walked towards the place where the green dragon was hovering. All the surrounding black fog followed the young lady's approach, and directly lined up on both sides. After stepping on the wind and waves, the young lady leapt up and flipped onto the back of the green dragon. She stood on the dragon's head. Her slender figure danced with the wind, making a fluttering sound. The moment the green dragon appeared, it suppressed the tense atmosphere of the entire chaotic auction. The green dragon hovered on the spot, its tail dragging on the ground, coiling several rounds. It proudly raised its dragon head. The dragon's whiskers fluttered along with the dragon's breath. A pair of green dragon eyes, emitting the majesty of the dragon clan. The moment the green dragon appeared, the auctioneer almost fell off White Tooth's back, not only because of its fear, but also because, the moment the azure dragon appeared, White Fang lowered his head and curled up into a ball. It didn't even have the courage to raise its head to look at the green dragon. The dragon clan showed its might. All the beasts in the world had to be obedient. This scene made the auctioneer's face gloomy. This caused the surrounding people to be both delighted and shocked. After this green dragon appeared, they then understood what a dragon was. This was a dragon, a real dragon. That white dragon monster was simply a monster. Even that monster had submitted to the majesty of a true dragon. With the existence of a dragon, what were they afraid of? Everyone's gazes were burning as they stared at the green dragon, looking at that sparkling green scales overflowing with brilliant colors. looking at that huge dragon's body coiling round and round, looking at the young lady standing on top of the dragon's head, indescribably domineering, indescribably awe-inspiring. This scene could be said, the next 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. They would never be able to forget this scene in front of them. How is this possible? The auctioneer was also shocked. In the air, strong fluctuations kept pressing against him. He almost fell off from White Tooth's body. Yi Qing Luo stood on top of the dragon's head. The dragon's body swayed. The air in the space swirled violently as it swayed. The power that represented the Azure Dragon was unleashed. After the fake dragon appeared, the Dragon King's eyes widened. In the pet space, the Azure Dragon was so excited that it wanted to rush out and slap him in the face. It could be said that a corpse puppet like White Fang was an insult to the dignity of a dragon. He was right. White Fang was just a corpse puppet. White Fang was not a dragon at all. Instead, it was a flood dragon. Don't underestimate the difference between a flood dragon and a dragon. However, there was a world of difference between the two. Dragons are gods, especially as a holy beast. They were gods who lived in the heavens. As for the flood dragon, it belonged to the category of flood dragons that lived in the water, resembling snakes yet not snakes, resembling dragons yet not dragons. Before the tribulation, a flood dragon that didn't even have a dragon horn. White Fang was the flood dragon before the tribulation. For some unknown reason, he was turned into a corpse puppet and was sent to the side of the auctioneer. Oh no, White Fang wasn't the auctioneer's battle pet. It was just that the mastermind had temporarily lent White Fang to the auctioneer. A flood dragon actually pretended to be a dragon. It even used the name of a dragon to do evil. As the ancestor of dragons, how could the Azure Dragon tolerate it? Chapter 37:01. This scene fell into Qiao Yulu's eyes. This caused her eyes to be covered with a layer of sinister coldness. The flames of hatred burned brightly. She gritted her teeth so hard that they broke. How could that bitch Di Luo tame a dragon? That was a dragon. In the entire world, those who had dragons as battle pets could be counted on one hand. Moreover, Qiao Yulu was even sure. Di Luo / S dragon was a few grades higher than the dragon she saw in the Linglong Palace. Her eyes were bloodshot, and her delicate body was trembling uncontrollably. Jealousy was growing in her heart. The auctioneer got up from the ground in disbelief and staggered. His hand trembled as he pointed at the girl in midair. She was so imposing that no one dared to look directly at her. His face was deathly pale, like the aura of death. White Fang, stand up. So what if it backslashes a dragon? You backslash re an immortal dragon. Compared to it, you backslash re more like a dragon. The auctioneer trembled and patted White Fang / body. He had encountered a real dragon. He had no strength to fight back. Just like before, when the people from the major forces were swallowed by White Fang and had no strength to fight back. Now, this feeling fell on his own body. It was extremely uncomfortable. It was like seeing a lake in an arid desert. After running closer, he realized that it was just a mirage. That kind of despair made him want to die. Oh no, he had already died before. He was also a dead man now, no matter how the auctioneer shouted. White Fang was curled up in a corner, shivering and unwilling to budge. The auctioneer felt that he was really isolated and helpless, relying on the existence of White Fang. He was just one person here. If White Fang didn't backslash, cooperate, how could those forces and families that were swallowed by White Fang let him go? He didn't backslash. Dare to think about the consequences. In fact, he didn't backslash have to think about it. The moment White Fang curled up in the corner, the people from the major forces were already full of joy, seeing that White Fang had no will to fight at all. Many families that had lost more than half of their elites decisively looked for trouble. Dozens of people surrounded him. Why did you bring that monster to the auction? Why did you block the auction? What is your purpose? Who are you? Why would you do that? Let us out of the auction. At this moment, everyone couldn't wait to leave this damned place. He stayed at the auction for a moment longer. They felt that the danger still existed. However, no matter how they questioned the auctioneer, no matter how cruelly they tried to force the auctioneer did not give any answer. Instead, he looked at Yi Qing Luo, who was standing in midair, looking at him coldly as he laughed out loud. None of you will be able to leave this place. So what if there were real dragons? Don't tell me that dragon can bring you out of this formation? Ha ha ha. Impossible. Even if the god of heaven were to come, he wouldn't be able to leave. The auctioneer laughed maniacally. Everyone started punching and kicking each other. They did not dare to use their Xian energy. He didn't dare to kill him. The current situation. Only the auctioneer knew what was going on. Looking at the mess of people, Yi Qing Luo lowered her eyes slightly. The auctioneer was a corpse puppet. No matter how those people tortured the auctioneer, even if they cut him into pieces. Chapter 3702. Impervious to swords and spears, impervious to fire and water, immortal. Not only that white dragon monster, and the auctioneer, corpse puppets. In this case, her identity had really been exposed. But what made Yi Qing Luo curious was, why did those people chase her all the way to the earth boundary? She squinted her long and narrow eyes. She couldn't guess the answer to this question, so she could only let the other party answer. Yi Qing Luo patted the green dragon's head lightly. The green dragon spat out a dragon's breath as its body suddenly dived downwards. An overbearing aura came charging towards them. The various powerhouses, people, swiftly moved away when they sensed the approaching aura. The crowd saw that arrogant, green dragon slightly stoop down. The arrogant dragon's head slowly bent down. The young lady's lips curled into a smile as she said, "Thank you," to the green dragon, and with a leap, she landed on the ground. At the same time when the young lady stood firmly on the ground, that green dragon's green light suddenly flashed. His colossal body instantly transformed into the same size as the auction house. Step by step, it followed closely behind the young lady. The surrounding people unknowingly opened up a path. Even the auctioneer, who was still lying on the ground laughing, subconsciously sat up and looked at her in a daze. But a moment later, Yi Qing Luo had already walked in front of the auctioneer. Yi Qing Luo stood still as her pink lips rose. "I'll give you two choices. Either you answer my question, or I'll beat you up until you answer my question." When the crowd heard that, their faces were filled with black lines. Simple and violent. No problem at all. The auctioneer looked at the glower flame fan in Yi Qing Luo's hands, alertly as the smile on his face froze. He took a step back. Yi Qing Luo followed closely as she smiled. "I know your background and your motive. Don't think of lying to me." She moved closer as her 5 fingers moved. The glower flame fan was pressed against the auctioneer's chin. Then she tilted her head and innocently blinked as she laughed lightly. "I even have a way to deal with you. Don't doubt my words." The auctioneer stiffened as he stared at the glower flame fan on his neck. A sinister glint flashed past his eyes. "Who on earth is your boss? What's the motive of locking everyone in the auction? All of this. Is it related to me being here?" When Yi Qing Luo asked questions, there was a smile in between her brows. But the words he spat out and the tone of his voice, it was so cold that it made people shiver. The auctioneer, who had been surrounded by dozens of people and dealt with all kinds of cruel methods without batting an eyelid, now revealed a horrifying expression. His eyes widened and his neck stiffened. Not answering. "So you're choosing the second option?" Yi Qing Luo's eyes curved. He moved his palm. The devouring flame fan gently slashed open. A dazzling light flashed across the auctioneer's eyes. "If you're touched by my glowing flame fan, you won't be able to recover that part of your body, no matter what." She chuckled, and the hand holding the glowing flame fan slowly moved downwards through the air. Finally, it stopped 3 inches below the man's navel. She chuckled. However, you shouldn't be too bothered. After all, you're just a dead person. You don't know pain, right? The auctioneer's face turned completely pale. *CK. Even if he was a dead man. But, as a man, the most important thing can't be lacking, okay? She held a weapon and threatened the man's family jewels. Was this still a young lady? Yi Qing Luo had been paying attention to the auctioneer's emotional changes, looking at the auctioneer's black face. Chapter 3703. The auctioneer's eyes moved. Yi Qing Luo continued, "Answer these 3 answers, and I'll let you off." Her voice paused for a moment before she chuckled again. Her voice was very evil. "Don't say that I didn't warn you. Once you fail, the person behind you will still appear and take over your task. At that time, I will still know the answer I want." The auctioneer's body tensed up as he heard Yi Qing Luo's words. The expression on his face unknowingly had some subtle changes. The next moment, he felt a burst of profound energy being released. A ball of excited flame started to burn on the glower flame fan. His body stiffened as he said, "I'll speak. I'll speak." The profound strength slowly came to a stop. The young lady's hand, which was holding the glower flame fan, pressed the fan against the auctioneer's chest. "Speak." The auctioneer looked at the fan in Yi Qing Luo's hand, which was far away from his family jewels, before he heaved a sigh of relief. I also don't know who the master behind me is. My motive for coming here is to send White Teeth to the auction house. As for the reason..." He paused as he looked at White Teeth, who was still shivering in fear. "The auction will gather all the elites from the 3 main cities. What's more, most of the powerhouses will bring their own elites to the auction to declare their power." His words made everyone's gazes look over. The auctioneer's voice trembled slightly, so they specially set up at the periphery of the auction. Roar! Suddenly, a sharp dragon's roar reverberated through the entire sky. It also forcibly suppressed the auctioneer's voice. When he heard that dragon's roar, the auctioneer's eyes suddenly lit up. His peripheral vision saw the crowd looking towards the direction of the dragon's roar. A glint flashed past his eyes. Suddenly the wind from his palm moved as he struck a palm towards Yi Qing Luo's face. Following that, his figure retreated backwards as he rushed towards the direction of White Teeth. Yi Qing Luo's vision, although followed the dragon's roar, and looked towards that direction, but her own perception and body's instinctive reaction. At the instant when the auctioneer struck, she had already dodged sideways, but the auctioneer had already escaped from her restraints. That White Teeth, who was originally shivering in the corner, had unknowingly raised its head up high. Its huge body began to roll and spin before the azure dragon appeared. White Fang did indeed have a trace of a dragon's majesty. However, at this moment, the azure dragon was a foil. Even if White Fang had such a huge body, there was no imposing manner to speak of. But in the eyes of the auctioneer, White Fang was their only hope. Yi Qing Luo originally wanted to chase after him, but when his gaze touched a certain place, she suddenly stopped in her tracks. The expression on his face also became cold and solemn. When the crowd saw the auctioneer escape, they were eager to chase after him. But when he saw Yi Qing Luo bringing the azure dragon, she returned back to Qiao Yinyan and the rest. They didn't understand the meaning of Yi Qing Luo's action momentarily. It was during this moment of stupor. All of a sudden, a blood-curdling scream rang out. Everyone saw a scene that made their hair stand on end. The auctioneer, who had been running towards White Fang, stood rooted to the spot. Its huge white teeth bent down slightly and bit the auctioneer's head. Kacha! His head was bitten into White Fang's mouth. White Fang gave a long roar as it spiraled towards the horizon, stirring the dark clouds in the sky. Chapter 3704. That auctioneer whose head had been bitten off was still standing on the ground as his body kept swaying and his hands kept waving about. He staggered and swayed as he walked forward. There wasn't a single drop of blood on that body. His head had been bitten off by that monster, and he was still alive and not bleeding? This was also a monster. Everyone's inner thoughts were in turmoil. They looked at the scene in front of them in shock and fear. On the other side, Yi Qing Luo brought the azure dragon as she rushed to the side of Qiao Yinyan and the others. Bo, Songyi, Pei Sheng, and the others were all staring at the azure dragon. Their faces were filled with fear and trepidation. This was their first time seeing a dragon, and the first time they had such close contact with a dragon. Only Qiao Yinyan alone had a congealed expression, as he wasn't attracted by the azure dragon at all. Instead, he looked at Yi Qing Luo and asked, "What's the matter?" Yi Qing Luo pursed her lips as she raised her head and looked towards a certain spot in the sky. "Look over there!" Qiao Yinyan followed her gaze. Suddenly his pupils dilated. What is that? Their voices attracted both Songyi and Pei Sheng's attention. Pei Sheng's expression changed slightly when he saw the scene in the sky. Why is there a black hole above? Yes, black hole. A small black hole was gradually enlarging. Bit by bit, it filled the entire sky of the auction. Evil cold Yin Qi spread across the sky. It was dark and oppressive, making people feel depressed. What is that? Qiao Yinyan looked at Yi Qing Luo as he asked. Yi Qing Luo pursed her lips. If I didn't see wrongly, it might be an array. This array looked very familiar. Previously, in the Nirvana realm, she had seen it before. She squinted her eyes slightly. The others also noticed the commotion on their side. When they saw that huge black hole in the sky, all of them cried out in shock. Just at this moment, that black hole suddenly expanded. Following that, one after another figures walked out from that black hole. It was as though heavenly soldiers and generals had descended from the sky. Wave after wave, they walked out of the black hole and into the auction hall. Rows after rows of people dressed in black robes, looking sinister and treacherous, just as they walked into the auction. The crowd felt that in the air. There was a chill in the air. Even the air that he breathed in was a bone-chilling cold that made his hair stand on end. A teleportation array? Qiao Yinyan frowned in surprise. Yi Qing Luo narrowed her eyes. Yes. That black hole was indeed a teleportation formation. It was when they were in the Nirvana realm. The Gloomy Palace used this teleportation formation to send over batch after batch of semi-finished corpse puppets. Gloomy Palace, Yi Qing Luo's line of sight swept past those rows of figures. With a single glance, he saw 3 people floating at the side of the black hole. Her eyes darkened. Yu Ji, Yu Nu, and Yu Han. It really was them after the last group of people walked out of the black hole. The black hole slowly disappeared in midair. Yi Qing Luo gauged with her eyes. There were at least 200 people who had entered the auction. The 3 people from the Yu family stood at the back of the crowd, hiding their figures. Yi Qing Luo also noticed. Standing at the very front of this batch of black-robed men he was also an acquaintance. That man apparently saw Yi Qing Luo. A pair of malicious eyes stared fiercely at Yi Qing Luo. He raised his hand and made a throat-slitting action. Chapter 3705. She opened her lips slightly as she exchanged glances with that person. Pharaoh He, long time no see. The person who stood in front of the crowd as the leader. He was the former Pharaoh group of the Dark Forces and the only survivor of the Dark Forces, Pharaoh He. So this was the Dark Forces team led by Pharaoh He? The sudden appearance of a group of black-robed men and black-robed men who descended from the sky. This aroused the vigilance of various large forces cultivators. One look and you knew that they came with ill intentions, especially those black-robed men. The evil chi which was emitting made one feel uncomfortable. The 2 executive elders' expressions changed slightly. They subconsciously looked towards Yi Qing Luo. But they saw Yi Qing Luo's expression was grave as she lowered her eyes and said something to Qiao Yinyan. The expression on her face was extremely solemn and complicated. The executive elder's heart skipped a beat. Executive elder immediately leaned close to Yi Qing Luo. Miss D, those people. Who are they? You know them? I've crossed hands with them before. Yi Qing Luo replied calmly and raised her brows. Don't you guys know their identities? Executive elder shook his head. Looked like the secluded palace had only developed their forces in Nirvana realm. The people in the Earth realm didn't know about the secluded palace. The secluded palace had suffered heavy losses in the battle in Nirvana realm. They still had the energy to set their sights on the Earth realm? How big of an obsession did they have with her? Who are they? Were they the ones who set up the array formation that sealed off the auction? That monster is theirs. Executive elder asked with a pale face. Yi Qing Luo looked at the valiant and spirited pharaoh He and nodded. The auctioneer should be a bait. These people are the appetizer. But the main course. She squinted her eyes slightly as her gaze swept past the crowd and landed on three nether. Her eyes darkened a little. Yi Qing Luo, I didn't expect to meet you here. As though she noticed Yi Qing Luo's gaze, Ghost Girl walked out from the crowd. She looked at Yi Qing Luo with a smile, but the haze between her brows was extremely obvious. Ghost Girl's voice broke the silence. Everyone looked toward Ghost Girl's line of sight at the same time. Yi Qing Luo. Who was Yi Qing Luo? But when everyone's vision was fixed on Yi Qing Luo, they were all stunned. Isn't this girl called Di Luo? However, looking at Miss D's expression, it seemed as though the Yi Qing Luo which was mentioned by that black-robed cold lady was that Di Luo. Yu Nu continued to look at her with a smile. We're old friends. Shouldn't you greet me? As soon as he said that, the crowd immediately burst into an uproar. Even Bo Songyi unconsciously led his 10 over mercenary brothers to retreat a few steps away from Yi Qing Luo. This group of black-robed men in front of him, it was obviously targeted at them. It was very likely that he was the instigator of the current situation. This bunch of people and that lady called Yi Qing Luo were old friends. Didn't that mean they were in cahoots? The crowd immediately thought of what Xiao Yilu had told them earlier. All these were planned by Yi Qing Luo. The white dragon was related to her. The ceiling formation was related to her. Was she deliberately allying with external forces to weaken the strength of the land? Seeing that everyone was already suspicious of Yi Qing Luo. Chapter 3706. Xiao Yilu pointed at Yi Qing Luo and laughed. What I said is right. She has ulterior motives. All these are orchestrated by her. As Xiao Yilu spoke, she walked out and pointed at Yi Qing Luo as she continued with a sneer. This person appeared out of thin air and advanced step by step, all for today's plot. Xiao Yilu's accusation made everyone even more suspicious of Yi Qing Luo. Seems like it's true. If she doesn't have a guilty conscience, why would she hide her name? Lie to us? Moreover, she obviously knows that group of people. That group of people could possibly be the force behind her. Intentionally trapping us here, what's her motive? All of us have been cheated by her. Someone asked Qiao Yinyan, eldest young Master Qiao, I'm afraid even you don't know her real identity. She hid her name and lurked beside you. So she must be trying to make a move on you. I find it strange. I've clearly never heard of this woman before. So how did she suddenly become known to everyone in without embroiling city? All sorts of discussions were going on. The way they looked at Yi Qing Luo. They totally treated Yi Qing Luo and that group of black-robed men who descended from the sky as a group of people. At this time, these people had already experienced wave after wave of horror and then joy. Their minds had already suffered a serious blow. Listening to those discussions, Pei Sheng's face turned red from anxiety. He opened his mouth and wanted to refute those people's words. but before he could open his mouth, he was suppressed by the questions that came from all directions. Yi Qing Luo narrowed her eyes slightly. Her line of sight was still on Ghost Girl's face. Ghost Girl's victorious smile was still hanging on her face and had not faded. Apparently, Ghost Girl did it on purpose. 3 people make a tiger. As long as she incited everyone to not believe Yi Qing Luo's words, those gossips would be able to crush Yi Qing Luo. No matter how capable Yi Qing Luo was, there was absolutely no way to turn the tables in today's plan. At this juncture, no matter how Yi Qing Luo explained, no one would believe her. Even if Yi Qing Luo was really clean, she couldn't explain it. The more Yi Qing Luo explained, the more suspicious it would be. Yu Nu delightfully raised her lips, wanting to see Yi Qing Luo's flustered look. However, what she saw was that the young girl's expression did not change in the slightest. Another girl. The girl's voice was clear and light. Her tone was calm and without any fluctuation. You're just a bunch of rats. Do you think you're worthy of calling me old friends? Don't try to climb up to me, Yi Qing Luo. Her tone was calm. However, the arrogance in his words was shocking. Even Ghost Maiden's expression changed. You're still quibbling. Xiao Yulu naturally refused to give Yi Qing Luo any chance to explain. Don't think that by saying this, you can make everyone believe you. Yi Qing Luo sneered as she retorted impolitely. Do you think that everyone is like you, a fool? You. Xiao Yulu gritted her teeth. Yi Qing Luo's smile gradually turned cold. Her eyes, which were like the first snow that had melted, swept past the crowd indifferently. Whether you believe me or not, or whatever thoughts you have, I don't care. I'll only say this once. If you want to leave this place alive, don't create trouble for me. Chapter 3707. The young lady's voice was clear and calm. His voice was indifferent, and not a hint of emotion could be heard from it. But there was an indescribable feeling of pressure from the bottom of one's heart. Obviously, they were being ridiculed and insulted. But on seeing the young lady's eyes, an icy cold glint revolved. Her chilly gaze swept past everyone's line of sight. Countless anger in their hearts were suppressed. But there was one person who was an exception. For example, what do you mean don't give you trouble? Di Luo. No, I should call you Yi Qing Luo now. You even hide your own name. How dare you talk big? Xiao Yulu's face flushed red, turning purple. Her gaze turned cold as she continued. From what I see, you are just putting on an act in order to let your plan go smoothly. A person like you, full of lies. Her voice paused as she looked at Xiao Yinyan. Brother, did you see that? This is the woman you have always believed in. She had been lying to you right from the start. She is. I know. Xiao Yinyan's clear voice interrupted Xiao Yulu's words. Xiao Yulu was stunned. You know what? I know. Her name is Yi Qing Luo. Xiao Yinyan's expression was calm as he replied calmly. Xiao Yulu's pupils suddenly widened. The meaning was, Yi Qing Luo didn't lie to him. Nor did she hide her identity? No. Impossible. That woman was a liar. Xiao Yulu was shocked. Hearing this sentence, Yi Qing Luo also got a shock. What did Xiao Yinyan's words mean? Knew she was Yi Qing Luo? Was it to help her out of trouble? But even if she had doubts now, it wasn't a good time to ask. Yi Qing Luo only took a glance at Xiao Yulu. In her eyes, at best, Xiao Yulu was just a clown. What she was more concerned about was the reason why Three Nether and the Dark Forces came to the Earth Realm. The current Palace of Darkness should still be recuperating, but they dealt with the Earth Realm in such an ostentatious manner, setting up such a huge game of chess. It was really hard for her not to think too much. TSK, Yi Qing Luo, you're really cruel. Yu Nu chuckled softly. In any case, we've fought a battle of life and death. We can be considered as people who have experienced life and death together. Do you really have the heart to treat me like this? Yi Qing Luo's expression didn't change. You're mistaken. It's me who one-sidedly tortured you, and it's also you who one-sidedly almost lost your life. So we can't be considered as people who have experienced life and death together. She paused, then continued, We're both women. Don't use your honey trap on me. Yu Nu sighed and glanced sideways at the two people beside her. That's why I said that I should have let you go from the start. This sentence of yours isn't right either. Yi Qing Luo continued to be indifferent. The both of them are too ugly. Using the beauty trap would only hurt the eyes. Ugly, ugly. Although the silence and coldness could not be considered as a peerless beauty. But it was definitely not ugly, right? Yu Ji and Yu Han's faces instantly darkened. The ghost girl covered her mouth and smiled delicately. However, her beautiful eyes were filled with an eerie coldness. She suddenly raised her hand. Her dark red nails seemed as though her hand was stained with fresh blood, which was strange and alluring. She laughed softly. Since you're so against being friends with me, then you can't blame us for disregarding our past relationship. The moment her hand straightened. Roar! A dragon's roar rang from the horizon. Chapter 3708. That white head coiled around Ghost Maiden's outstretched hand. Ghost Maiden saw the broken dragon horn on White Tooth's head. The expression on her face turned slightly cold. She raised her hand and caressed White Tooth's head. White Tooth gave a low howl, as though he was acting coquettishly. This scene made everyone understand what was going on. This monster, it wasn't the auctioneer's battle pet. It was the lady named Ghost Maiden's battle pet. Who were they? Everyone shifted their gaze towards Yi Qing Luo. They were still hesitating about Yi Qing Luo's relationship with those people. Everyone, don't be deceived by their tricks. Executive Elder cleared his throat. No matter what Miss Yi Qing Luo's name is, but I firmly believe and dare to use my reputation as Executive Elder to guarantee that she absolutely has no intention to harm anyone. On the contrary, the other party time and time again, trying to create public opinion to break down our trust towards Miss Yi Qing Luo, but it made me believe in Miss Yi Qing Luo even more. Executive Elder had been the closest to Yi Qing Luo. The both of them could hear Yi Qing Luo's conversation with the people beside her, from Yi Qing Luo's performance, from the start, and the conversation with Qiao Yinyan and the rest, adding on to the fact that when the monster attacked everyone earlier, she blocked it and summoned the green dragon to suppress that monster. Whether a person was innocent, when a person does something, does he or she have another goal in mind? No matter how good the disguise was, there would still be flaws. Executive Elder believed that Yi Qing Luo and the other party were absolutely not accomplices. Executive Elder's words made everyone's wavering hearts start to float again. Qiao Yilu was so angry that she almost bit her teeth off. Why? Why did someone always stand on that slut side? She was obviously without Embroiling City's mysterious maiden. She was the one with the most distinguished status. A bunch of ignorant people. Qiao Yilu clenched her fists tightly. The back of her slender hands were covered with green veins. Her bloodshot eyes were filled with jealousy as she looked towards the direction of Ghost Maiden and the rest. In her heart, a decision was slowly formed. Perhaps she felt Qiao Yilu's gaze. That Ghost Maiden who was caressing her white teeth curled her lips as she laughed sinisterly. On the account that everyone wants to leave the auction, I shall give everyone a chance to leave. Everyone immediately looked at her. Netherworld Girl curled her lips and spoke in a gentle voice that was filled with bewitchment. Join our Palace of Darkness. As long as you leave your current forces and join the Palace of Darkness, you will be able to leave the auction. Serene Girl's words caused the crowd's expression to freeze. Yi Qing Luo's eyes dimmed as her slender brows creased tightly as she looked at Spectral Girl. She was trying to poach him. Was there anyone who would poach someone so openly? Moreover, he was able to participate in the annual auction. Which one of them didn't come from a famous force? Most of them might not have heard of Gloomy Palace. Let them break away from their current power. Join a force that I've never heard of? And using such a despicable method, anyone with a bit of backbone wouldn't listen to him. I'll join! Just as everyone was expressing their unyielding spirit in their hearts, a voice suddenly rang out. A clear voice suddenly rang out. He looked in the direction of the voice. Everyone saw Xiao Yulu flying in the direction of the ghost girl. Chapter 3709. The crowd was in an uproar. How did this palace of darkness appear? Why haven't I heard of it before? The Empyrean lady of Without Embroiling City gave up her status as the Empyrean lady and joined the palace of gloomy darkness? Not only is she the Empyrean fairy of Without Embroiling City, but she's also the first young miss of Without Embroiling City's Qiao family. Is she really going to give up all of that? Did you see how close that monster was to them? This means that the reason we're trapped in the auction is because of them. They want our lives and want us to join their *T dark palace? Pooh. Just now, because of White Fang's savagery, the scene of it devouring a large number of profound practitioners. This group of people was the culprit behind everything. How could the crowd give them any face? However, just as everyone was talking about it, there was no hesitation in Xiao Yulu's footsteps. Ha ha ha. Empyrean maiden, I'll prove that you've made the right choice. The dark woman curled her red lips tenderly and hooked her finger at Xiao Yulu. It looked as if it was summoning its little pet. However, Xiao Yulu stepped forward obediently. She stared at Yunu and said word by word, "My only condition for joining the palace of gloomy darkness is, I want to kill that woman with my own hands." "No problem," Yunu answered straightforwardly. The corners of Xiao Yulu's mouth curled up into a sinister sneer. It could be seen that this group of people was extremely powerful. Now the executive elder had already stood on Yi Qing Luo's side. Whatever she said was of no use. Moreover, sooner or later, someone would find out that this dragon egg was indeed brought to the auction house by her. She had been used by this so-called palace of gloomy darkness. This also meant that she was already black. Joining the gloomy palace was her only option. The only one, the way to survive and kill Yi Qing Luo with his own hands. Because she and the palace of gloomy darkness had a common enemy. What about you guys? Those who want to join the palace of gloomy darkness should hurry up. There will be a limit to the number of people who can join. Yunu looked at the crowd with a smile. The feminine voice was filled with a chill that made one's body tremble. Everyone snorted disdainfully. Evidently, they didn't take you seriously at all. From the looks of it, all of you don't want to leave this place. All of you want to become White Fang's food. Yunu wasn't angry. She gently stroked her lips with her dark red fingers and said with a smile, "Then don't blame the Palace of Darkness for not giving you a chance to live." The executive elder's face darkened as he listened to Ghost Girl's arrogant words. He took a look at the calm-looking Yi Qing Luo and subsequently looked at Yunu, cruel and bloody, indiscriminately killing the innocent heretical sect. "You still want to instigate us? What's your goal? Aren't you afraid that we'll join forces with our families to deal with you after we leave the auction?" In the eyes of the executive elder and the profound practitioners of the various forces, this so-called palace of gloomy darkness was just a new small force. The dark woman chuckled when she heard this. Jiao Jiao's gentle laughter was accompanied by a trace of sinister treachery. "That's if you can walk out of the auction alive, isn't it?" She met the executive elder's gaze as she gave a tender smile, but those who are unwilling to join the palace of gloomy darkness can only die here, forever unable to walk out of the auction. That arrogant words and ridiculing attitude made everyone's heart surge with rage. "You don't believe me? Then let's kill the chicken to warn the monkey." Yunu's fingers caressed White Fang by the side of her body. As her voice fell, White Fang roared as it spiraled and surged. Chapter 37:10. The other party's arrogant attitude made all the cultivators' faces turn black. Executive Elder A took the opportunity to shout out sternly, "The other party only has 200 over people, and we have hundreds of people. Don't tell me we can't defeat them? As long as we kill them, we will definitely be able to break out of the array." Executive Elder B looked towards Yi Ching Luo. "Miss Yi, that monster. I'll have to trouble you and Master Long." As he said that, he looked respectfully at Azure Dragon. No matter what profound grade they sensed from Yi Ching Luo, to be able to subdue a dragon beast as her own battle pet, her ability was definitely not to be underestimated. The strong deserved their respect. Yi Ching Luo took a look at that white fang which was originally trembling under Azure Dragon's suppression. As it started to bare its fangs and claws again, she pursed her lips and said, "That monster, Azure Dragon, and I can settle it, but those black-robed men, don't belittle them. They are the same as that monster." Yi Ching Luo hadn't finished her words. Suddenly, they heard a mournful shriek reverberating through the sky. Under Executive Elder A's call, many powerhouses cultivators moved together, but there were a few cultivators who totally didn't put the black-robed men in their eyes. They directly bypassed the group and charged towards the black-robed men, wanting to kill the chicken to warn the monkey, but they had not expected. The weapon in their hands had slashed the black-robed man's waist into two. That black-robed man, who was left with only a section of his body, could still use his bones as a weapon, piercing into their hearts. The scene was shocking, just like how the auctioneer's head was bitten off, but his body was still able to move. These black-robed men, even if their limbs were separated from their bodies, they could still continue to attack. This was simply a bunch of monsters. Those cultivators who took the lead to charge up were all annihilated in a split second. After that, the various powerhouses cultivators who followed Executive Elder's call were so shocked that they stopped in their tracks, standing stiffly on the spot, their faces filled with terror as they looked at the shocking scene. Even Executive Elder A was stunned on the spot. "Ha ha ha. Still want to resist? No way, none of you can escape. My group of puppets are immortal." Yu Nu looked at the terror on everyone's faces with satisfaction. She laughed delightfully. She was extremely complacent as she raised her slender eyebrows towards Yi Ching Luo's direction. "My little white fangs, go, these are all your food." Ghost Woman stroked the white fangs that were writhing in the sky and issued an order. White Fang roared and rushed towards those profound practitioners who were frozen in place. He opened his mouth and rushed towards them. The black-robed men did not stop their attacks. Powerful air currents were released from their bodies, which condensed into blades and frantically attacked the people in front of them. "Ah, help! Monster! They are all monsters! These are all monsters!" The profound practitioners who were originally filled with confidence to kill all of these people before them were now fleeing in all directions in fright. However, their speed simply couldn't compare to White Fang and the black-robed men. Those who don't can only die. If you want to live, join the palace of gloomy darkness, ghost girl's light, and spirited laughter bewitched all the profound practitioners present. We can also modify all of you to become like these puppets of mine. We can give all of you bodies that are impervious to all weapons and impervious to fire and water. The blood of the profound practitioners dyed the ground red. As his white teeth moved, he swallowed a profound practitioner into his stomach. Dark clouds rolled, lightning flashed, and thunder roared. Chapter 37:11. Yi Miss Yi. Executive Elder Old B's face turned pale as he called out Yi Ching Luo's name in a trembling voice. That bunch of monsters. There was no way to deal with them, even if they had the numbers and were willing to unite. But there was no way they could defeat those undying monsters. Their attacks towards that bunch of monsters were totally unable to cause any damage at all. What should they do? Executive Elder subconsciously placed all his hopes on Yi Qing Luo. The scene in front of her made Yi Qing Luo's pupils turn wretched. Her long and narrow eyes slowly filled with an austere cold intent. Her pitch-black pupils seemed to be covered with frost. Her slender brows creased tightly. She had not expected Yu Nu to make a move just like that. Moreover, it was done in such a straightforward manner, totally not giving these people any chance to hesitate at all. From the looks of it, they really intended to capture all the various powerhouses' elites from the various main cities in the Earth domain in one fell swoop. If this carried on, it was merely the time for half an incense stick to burn. The people here would be forced to death by this atmosphere first. Yi Qing Luo's eyes narrowed as a burst of fiery, profound energy shot out from her fingertips, just as the profound energy charged into midair. In an instant, like a volcano eruption, it exploded with a loud bang. Immediately following that, the sky was filled with fire clouds as intense chi waves circulated in the air, blocking the surging white fangs and black-robed men. Yu Nu's brows rose. Seeing Yi Qing Luo making a move, her feminine lips curled upwards as she laughed. Yi Qing Luo, do you think you can stop me? Following her ending words, Yu Nu raised her hand as her palm landed on Qiao Yulu's shoulder. Qiao Yulu cried out miserably as she spat out a large mouthful of blood. Immediately following that, boundless yin qi entered Qiao Yulu's body. Qiao Yulu's body kept twisting and struggling under the black qi as she cried out miserably in pain. Immediately following that, when Qiao Yulu absorbed all the yin qi into her body, Yu Nu's palm pushed Qiao Yulu towards Yi Qing Luo's direction. Since you want to join secluded palace, then show your sincerity. Qiao Yulu's body was like an arrow that had left the bow as it shot towards Yi Qing Luo. Right in front of him was a violent surge of profound energy mixed with yin energy that caused one's entire body to tremble. Yi Qing Luo commanded Azure Dragon to stop White Fang's fake dragon from continuing to devour humans. Then he faced Qiao Yulu's attack and directly counterattacked. The two forces collided. An explosive sound suddenly erupted in the air. In all directions, the airwaves of profound strength were set off like rolling waves. The surging air waves were like sharp blades cutting across the skin on his face. Yi Qing Luo's expression was calm as she fiercely passed through the surging chi waves as his profound energy surged. The gourd flame fan in his hands had already shot out a strong, profound energy. Oh! Qiao Yulu was hit in the chest by the wind blade. She let out a muffled groan as her body flew backward. Yi Qing Luo closed her glower flame fan as her gaze swept towards the direction of Azure Dragon. Under Azure Dragon's attack, White Fang was no longer as ostentatious as before. His entire body was cut into pieces by the Azure Dragon's sharp claws. White Fang, on the other hand, seemed to know no exhaustion and continued to tangle with the Azure Dragon without hesitation. It seemed like the Azure Dragon had the upper hand, but somehow something felt amiss. Yi Qing Luo's brows creased into a bundle as she stared deadly at the Azure Dragon. She was about to head towards the Azure Dragon's side to settle White Fang first, but she was blocked by a gust of strong wind. Di Luo no Yi Qing Luo. Chapter 3712. Motherf asterisk Ker. Yi Qing Luo's heart was about to explode. Wasn't this girl annoying? Yi Qing Luo took a step back to avoid Qiao Yulu's attack. Qiao Yulu, you've been used by them once or twice. Haven't you learnt your lesson? Do you really think that you'll be able to survive after they've wiped out all the profound practitioners from the various powers? I don't know if you can survive or not, but what I can confirm is that you will definitely die. Qiao Yulu pressed on that beautiful face. Her eyelashes cast a black arc under her eyes. Wisps of black aura, like ink, spread out in her eyes. It made her look extremely gloomy and gloomy. This was the sign of Yin Qi entering the body. Yi Qing Luo frowned. This Qiao Yulu's hatred towards her was a little scary. In order to kill her, she didn't hesitate to abandon her identity as mysterious maiden and chose to join the secluded palace, willingly to be used by others. Yi Qing Luo really didn't understand which class this thinking was for. Anyway, she felt that Qiao Yulu could no longer be described with the words silly or stupid. Otherwise, it would be an insult to these words. Yi Qing Luo was entangled by Qiao Yulu. The black-robed man's attack didn't stop. Qiao Yinyan looked at the horizon, at the two figures fighting, and that bloody and horrifying scene around them. His expression was cold as he pursed his lips and looked at Pei Sheng. The situation is critical now. I'm afraid it's not realistic to rely on a Luo alone. We can't stand by and watch anymore. Follow me closely. A Luo Shi. She won't. Pei Sheng's pupils contracted. His hands clenched into fists as he asked worriedly. Qiao Yinyan took a look at the apparently crazy Qiao Yulu. His face sunk. A Luo's ability is far beyond our imagination. What we need to do now is to protect ourselves, not to be a burden to her. Those monsters, other than Yi Qing Luo's weapon, these people were unable to deal with those monsters. They couldn't resist, which meant that they could only passively accept those monsters' attacks. If this went on, even if they had the advantage in numbers, they would immediately be at a disadvantage. Gather everyone and work together. The executive elder and Qiao Yinyan thought of the same thing. In order to prevent more profound practitioners from being sacrificed, they had to take relative measures, even if he couldn't deal with those monsters. At the very least, he had to stop them from committing murder. Yes, no matter what, we have to control our casualties first. There are a few hundred of us. Why should we be afraid of these monsters? We are elites from the various major cities and major factions. I can't die here. We can't let these monsters achieve their goal. Everyone's eyes were burning with passion. One by one, they released their dark force, fighting with their lives to suppress the other party. The dazzling dark force was extremely eye-catching in the midst of Yin Qi. The surging waves of dark force enveloped the entire auction, with order delaying the monsters. The rate of casualties had indeed slowed down a lot. Both sides refused to back down and continued to resist the monsters' attacks. The dark force that filled the sky intertwined with the cause field. Under the saber light and sword shadow, the imposing manner was majestic like a rainbow. After Yi Qing Luo and Qiao Yulu crossed hands for more than 10 rounds, her expression sunk as she took a few steps back. He didn't know if it was an illusion. Qiao Yulu's current state was that the more she fought, the braver she became, as though she didn't know pain and exhaustion. The current Qiao Yulu should still be in a human body and had not gone through the transformation of a corpse puppet. Chapter 37:13. She originally wanted to settle Qiao Yulu quickly, then to help Azure Dragon settle that white tooth monster, the array that was set up around the auction. Yi Qing Luo could clearly feel the dense Yin Qi coming from all directions. If they stayed in this array for a period of time, it would have a huge impact on them. There was a possibility that it might even weaken their powers, causing the Yin Qi to enter their bodies. In Nirvana Realm's Nether Palace's territory, when Yi Qing Luo was sealed in the palace by the mastermind, her body was almost corroded by the Nether Palace's Yin Qi. If her willpower was weak, there was a possibility that she would become Nether Palace's puppet, controlled by them. What was even more unfortunate was that her body and mind were swallowed by the Yin Qi directly, like Qiao Yulu. Obviously, after the Yin Qi entered her body, she had lost her own rationality. But Qiao Yulu's attacks were getting fiercer and fiercer as she fought. It really made Yi Qing Luo shocked. Somehow, she seemed to have forgotten something, just like she felt that Qiao Yulu's attacks looked as though she was trying her best to kill her. But Yi Qing Luo had an ominous premonition in her heart, as though Nether Palace had specially made use of Xiao Yulu to delay her time. Wait a minute. Delay time? Yi Qing Luo's pupils suddenly widened. The expression on her face congealed. Her deep and enchanting eyes looked in the direction of the azure dragon in shock. Azure dragon! Her throat was only able to spit out 2 words. But the scene in front of her silenced all her voices. Black chi filled the air, as though a thick fog had dyed the sky. That imitation white dragon monster, under Azure Dragon's tearing, its huge dragon body had already broken into pieces. But White Fang, who was supporting his broken body, emitted a dense black aura, mixed with the rolling dark clouds and lightning. Layers and layers of it entangled Azure Dragon. White Tooth's injuries were more serious. The surrounding black chi became thicker and deeper. It could be said, the Azure Dragon was completely bound by this mass of black chi. This was White Tooth's motive. Yi Qing Luo finally understood. Earlier, when Azure Dragon obviously had the upper hand, why was her heart beating so fast? At the time, she did not realize this. Damn it! How dare they plot against Azure Dragon? Yi Qing Luo's charming eyes were filled with a chilly killing intent. Powerful and thick profound energy surged out from his body. Her fingertips twitched. The devouring flame fan in his hand unleashed a powerful pressure. It kicked up a huge hurricane and headed straight for the Azure Dragon. Yi Qing Luo. Xiao Yilu gave a cold harumph as she once again entangled Yi Qing Luo crazily. Yi Qing Luo's entire mind was occupied by the green dragon. Without any hesitation, she waved her palm and shot out a stream of profound chi. The surrounding air waves surged and twisted. It formed an invisible wave that forced Xiao Yilu back. Yi Qing Luo leapt up and charged towards the green dragon. "Don't come any closer!" The Azure Dragon's hoarse voice rang out in his mind. His voice was filled with suppressed pain. How could it not be painful? The Azure Dragon was the leader of the 4 great sacred beasts, a righteous sacred beast. He had just woken up not long ago, and because he had formed a blood contract with her, his strength had yet to recover. Furthermore, he was suppressed by the realm and the contract. While he was being entangled by White Tooth's evil chi, it was as if its soul and psychic power were being entangled by the evil energy. Father! Shiju couldn't sit still in the pet space. Chapter 37:14. Yi Qing Luo knitted her brows tightly. She understood Azure Dragon's meaning. White Fang was specially used by Nether Palace to plot against Azure Dragon. It was intentionally used to bait her. If she went over rashly, that would be in line with Nether Palace's intentions. But to just leave Azure Dragon like that, how could she possibly do it? Yi Qing Luo, do you despise me so much? How dare you be distracted? She heard Xiao Yilu's haunting voice ringing in her ears. Mixed with it was an attack filled with murderous intent. Yi Qing Luo was feeling frustrated. Anger surged in her heart. There was also a vicious killing intent spreading in his chest. She frowned as her fingertips flipped. The glower flame fan in her hands opened up, drawing a biting cold wind blade arc, clashing against Xiao Yilu's attack. She pursed her lips as her eyes gradually turned red. Bam, bam, bam. A deafening explosion resounded. As the profound energy clashed, the surrounding buildings were all blasted into pieces as rubble flew everywhere. Xiao Yilu was struck right in the middle as she flew backwards. Her soft body crashed heavily onto a building. Blood spurted out from her mouth. Xiao Yilu cried out miserably as she fell onto the ground. Her internal organs seemed as though they were about to gush out from her mouth. This scene made Yi Qing Luo subconsciously raised her hand and pressed against her own chest. The redness under her eyes deepened. She knew that this was the sign of evil chi entering the body. This evil chi was interfering with her emotions. The more easily angered, the more frustrated she was, the more evil chi could seep into one's heart. Yi Qing Luo's eyes darkened as she took a deep breath, suppressing the various emotions in her heart. Her figure flashed as she speedily headed towards Azure Dragon's direction. Profound energy burst forth as the glower flame fan on her fingertips was also burning with raging flames. The alluring red glow instantly covered that patch of black chi which was emitted from the white fang. Black and red intertwined, like the black smoke as cold blood seeped out. You! Azure Dragon didn't expect Yi Qing Luo to rush over. An indescribable feeling arose in its heart. Yi Qing Luo's eyes darkened as her long and narrow eyes outlined a seductive cold arc, appearing extremely evil. Her black hair fluttered in the wind, and her red clothes fluttered. The profound energy in her entire body surged even more violently. His entire person was like a blood-colored firework, blooming bit by bit. Since you have signed a contract with me, you are my companion. How can I just watch my comrade fight alone? The girl's sonorous voice was firm and without the slightest hesitation. Then, the dazzling dark light around the young girl suddenly blossomed with a whoosh. In an instant, the Azure Dragon and White Fang were completely covered. Roar! White Fang roared in pain. Under the pain, his broken body kept twitching and twisting. Even the dense black aura was devoured by the waves of raging flames. This scene caused the expression of Senyu, who was originally watching by the side, to darken. Yu Ji frowned. White Fang was in the first batch of battle pets. Her weapon shouldn't have been able to kill White Fang. She can even purify White Fang's evil Yin Qi. Yu Nu's eyes widened in shock. Yu Han hugged Yu Nu's slender waist tightly, as her expression was icy cold. This is different from the results of the investigation. We must start from her weapon. Wait. Yu Nu suddenly covered her mouth as she cried out in shock. Look at her weapon! Yu Ji and Yu Han immediately looked towards the direction of the voice. They saw the sky full of black fog and under the red glow. Chapter 37:15. A flickering light aura flashed on the glowing flame fan. The surging profound energy lingered on the gourd flame fan. It caused her figure that was red like the blazing sun to seem like a pure and elegant poppy. Countless wind blades circled around the girl's body in a frenzy. Her weapon evolved, an evolvable artifact. Triple Nether exclaimed in astonishment. They had not expected that the glower flame fan in Yi Qing Luo's hands could actually evolve at this juncture. The evolution of the weapon was equivalent to the evolution of the whole body. Even the mental energy within the gourd flame fan, which had been refined with the divine power of the netherworld, had evolved. Therefore, when dealing with a battle pet like White Fang, the evolved spirit would cover up White Fang's own evil aura. Yu Nu's beautiful eyes dimmed a little. She bit her red lips with a trace of resentment in her eyes. That slut, she was really damn lucky. At a time like this, her weapon could still evolve. However, Dark Girl's eyes gradually darkened. A faint black aura leaked out from between his brows. So what if it evolved? Today, they had made all the necessary preparations. He would definitely get rid of that slut here. On the other side, Yi Qing Luo had also sensed the surging energy from the glower flame fan. She quickly dispersed the black fog that enveloped the Azure Dragon and slashed a wind blade at White Fang. White Fang roared and tried to break free, but Yi Qing Luo's attacks were swift and fierce. White Fang was cut in half at the waist. After the dragon's head was separated from its body, it fell limply to the ground. The two parts of its huge body kept wriggling. However, he was unable to reconnect the two halves of his body. The black mist slowly dispersed. The Azure Dragon's slightly tired head was revealed. Yi Qingluo looked towards Qiao Yilu's direction. Qiao Yilu was lying on the spot where she had fallen, her body arched as if she was in so much pain that she couldn't stand up. She retracted her gaze and sped up to purify the evil aura around the azure dragon. "Father!" Suddenly, the clear voice of a child rang in his ears. Yi Qingluo felt a tightness in her chest. Shiju actually forcefully scurried out from the pet space. The palm-sized ball pounced towards the azure dragon. "Shiju, come back! Jeaner, don't come over!" Yi Qingluo's pupils suddenly widened as she cried out anxiously. The azure dragon's voice rang out. But it was too late for Yi Qingluo to stop him. Thick black fog covered Shiju's body in a split second. The dragon head that was originally lying on the ground and ceaselessly curled up suddenly leaped up and opened its mouth to swallow Shiju into its stomach. "Shijua!" Yi Qingluo's hand caught empty air. With a backhand punch, she heavily smashed White Fang's head. White Fang's head smashed onto the ground and bounced a few times. "Spit out Shiju!" Yi Qingluo stepped on by Ya's head as she shouted sternly. White Tooth played dead. "Jeaner!" Azure Dragon was flustered and his eyes widened. The black mist around its body also surged wildly due to the change in its mood. The Azure Dragon immediately let out a muffled groan as it was entangled. Its whiskers shook, and its green dragon scales turned into streaks of light. It desperately tried to break free from the entanglement of the evil Yin energy. Yi Qingluo comforted the Azure Dragon in her heart. Her long and narrow eyes were suffused with an icy chill. She stepped hard on by Ya's head a few times. "Yi Qingluo, if you don't listen to me obediently, the sword will not have eyes." Just at this moment, a soft voice was transmitted into Yi Qingluo's ears. There was an obvious sense of pride in that voice. Yi Qingluo's heart trembled. Chapter 37:16. Among the black-robed men, the leader held a man in his hand, and a sharp blade was pressed against the man's neck. The man's handsome face was steely green as his eyes were filled with anger. After meeting Yi Qingluo's gaze, he instantly turned guilty. "Ah, Sheng!" Yi Qingluo's pupils contracted as she looked at the man who was restrained and called out softly, "I'm sorry." Pei Sheng apologized softly. This bunch of black-robed men were simply too sinister. Earlier, when Shiju appeared and was swallowed by White Tooth, it made him place all his attention on Yi Qingluo. Momentarily, he neglected the approaching Pharaoh his own mistake. He actually became Luo's burden. Pei Sheng did not feel good in his heart. Pharaoh, he chose him as a tool to threaten Luo. It was because he was too weak. If he was slightly stronger, the other party wouldn't have this chance. He wouldn't become Luo's burden. The more he thought, the more guilty Pei Sheng felt. TSK. Pharaoh, he laughed coldly. "Yi Qingluo, so what if your luck is good? Your only shortcoming is that you're too soft-hearted. I want to see if your life is more important or your little brother's life is more important." As Pharaoh, he said that, he held Pei Sheng's neck tightly. His face was filled with a complacent smile. Pei Sheng's features contorted in pain as he tried to struggle, but was trapped even tighter. Yi Qingluo's eyes darkened. Her slender fingers clenched into a fist as her brows overflowed with a chilly intent. Despicable. Pharaoh actually used Pei Sheng to threaten her. "Don't bother about me. Luo, don't bother." "Ah!" Pei Sheng screamed. Suddenly, Pharaoh's blade grazed Pei Sheng's neck. Pei Sheng drew in a cold breath from the pain as he grimaced in pain, unable to open his mouth. Yi Qingluo's eyes darkened as she stared coldly at Pharaoh. "You'd better control your hand. If you hurt him again, you can try to see if you can still use him to threaten me." Pharaoh's hand trembled as the expression on his face turned stiff. He suppressed the fear in his heart as he shouted at Yi Qingluo, "Stand aside obediently." Yi Qing Luo's eyes were gloomy as she clenched her fingers tightly. His knuckles were pale from the strength of his grip. Roar! The azure dragon gradually revealed itself in the black fog. He opened his eyes wide and stared at White Fang's head, his dragon breath surging. At this moment, Yi Qing Luo was in a dilemma. On the other side was Pei Sheng. On one side was Shi Ju. If she didn't move, what would happen to Shi Ju after it was swallowed by White Fang? White Fang's body was filled with evil energy. Could Shi Ju's small body withstand it? If they moved, Pharaoh, he would definitely not hesitate to take Pei Sheng's life. Since she had promised to help Pei Sheng, she would definitely help him to the end. If Pei Sheng lost his life because of this, she would feel guilty. Also, the profounders from the various powers in the surroundings. They were all waiting for a chance to leave the auction. What to do? Yi Qing Luo's complexion was pale, and her tightly pursed pink lips were trembling slightly. Luo, behind you! Suddenly, he heard Qiao Yinyan's panicked voice. There were a few figures who were rushing towards her at high speed. Yi Qing Luo's brows twitched as she was just about to move. But Yunu laughed faintly. Be obedient and don't move. If you alarm Pharaoh, and his hand trembles. That would be bad. Chapter 37:17. Too light and in different sentences. It made Yi Qing Luo's body, which wanted to dodge, suddenly froze. In the next instant, a ferocious gust of wind from a palm landed heavily on her back. Yi Qing Luo only felt a wave of intense pain as her internal organs churned. Her body staggered a few steps forward. Blood spilled out from the corner of her mouth. She coughed violently as she covered her mouth. Luo! Di Fu! Miss Di! Miss Yi! The surrounding crowd cried out in shock. Ha ha ha! Yi Qing Luo, you're just SOSO. While the crowd was worried, they were discussing in whispers. Qiao Yulu's voice was very obvious. Qiao Yulu looked complacently at Yi Qing Luo, who was spitting out blood as she finally felt much better. What a ridiculous, brotherly relationship. Since you want to use your life to exchange for that trash's life, then I shall fulfill your wish. Qiao Yulu sneered as her lips twitched. Following that, she flipped her palm and attacked towards Yi Qing Luo's direction. Her attack was extremely fast, totally not giving Yi Qing Luo any chance to breathe. Yi Qing Luo clutched her chest as it was in extreme pain. Even the slightest movement of his body would cause his internal organs to feel sharp pain as if they were being torn apart. Qiao Yulu's attack made her face turn paler. She couldn't dodge. She couldn't resist. Was Yunu doing this on purpose, trying to torture her in this way? Seeing Qiao Yulu's attack getting closer, the worried growls and Yunu's complacent voice continued. None of you move! Whoever dares to stop me, this lad is dead. When Qiao Yinyan and the rest heard this, they wanted to go up to stop her, but they were all rooted to the ground as their eyes were filled with hesitation. F***K. I don't care if he dies or not. You bunch of trash. How dare you touch my people? I will skin you alive. Old Lai didn't have the patience to think so much. He was only concerned about Yi Qing Luo alone. Gathering treasures and being amiable, that was on account of Yi Qing Luo. Especially now, that bunch of people from Secluded Palace were old enemies. Seeing them, Old Lai had the intention to kill them. How could he possibly calm down? Old Lai's rage only lasted for a short moment. The biting, cold, profound energy which Qiao Yulu was brewing had already attacked towards Yi Qing Luo's face. Ah! Pei Sheng's pupils constricted. Suddenly, an extremely dazzling golden light erupted from his eyes. He stared at Yi Qing Luo's direction. There seemed to be some kind of anger in his heart that kept surging. It was all because of him. It was all because of him. Luo was threatened by others. Luo was injured. Obviously, they wanted to use this method to torture Luo. He could not stand by and watch a Luo get injured because of her. A Luo had sacrificed so much for him. He couldn't become a Luo's burden. You, all of you, deserve to die. From Pei Sheng's throat came a roar that sounded like that of a trapped beast. His voice was hoarse, making it hard to hear what he was saying. Pharaoh Crane only felt that the suppressed man's aura suddenly rose. He didn't take it to heart. He just moved the sword closer to the man's neck. However, as soon as he moved, a bam sound was heard. The man's body suddenly exploded with a surge of raging energy. The thick, profound energy was like a spider web as it spread in the air. The majestic and powerful energy swept up a slight hurricane. Bam! Pharaoh Crane's body was suddenly repelled by the sudden burst of profound energy. Chapter 37:18. His entire body was emitting a dense, profound light. The surrounding black-robed men and Pharaoh, he were all injured by that profound ray. What's going on? Pharaoh, his body was sent flying, and with a somersault in midair, he crashed onto a building. He clutched his chest as he spat out a mouthful of blood. Wasn't that lad without the strength to even truss a chicken? How did he suddenly become so powerful? It was really uncanny. The commotion over here made Three Nether's expression turn extremely cold and solemn. Ghost Girl's reaction was extremely fast. The moment she sensed the change in Pei Sheng's aura, her cold and gloomy eyes were filled with an eerie chill. Following that, she was like an arrow leaving the bow as she charged towards Yi Qing Luo's direction, and on Yi Qing Luo's side indeed. At the moment when Pei Sheng resisted, Yi Qing Luo swiftly flipped her hand as she clasped her wrist, which was attacking towards her face. Tightly, her 5 fingers clenched tightly. A kacha sound was heard. Qiao Yulu's wrist broke in response. Yi Qing Luo's speed was extremely fast. It was almost in a blink of an eye. After Pei Sheng broke free from the restraint, her entire body started to revolve a majestic, profound energy, which contained an earth-shattering energy, stirring up the surrounding air as layers of clear and crystalline qi waves appeared, swiftly counterattacking towards Qiao Yulu. Qiao Yulu's face turned pale as black qi filled the space between her brows, as though her entire face was shrouded in black qi. It made her face, which was as beautiful as a flower and as beautiful as jade, look sinister and treacherous. Yi Qing Luo's counterattack made Qiao Yulu's complacent expression freeze on her face. Without Pharaoh, he making use of Pei Sheng to balance Yi Qing Luo. She was totally not Yi Qing Luo's opponent, who was in a rage. Suddenly, Qiao Yulu's eyes flashed as she saw a certain spot. Her pupils, which were filled with black qi, suddenly surged with waves after waves of turbulent evil qi. Yi Qing Luo's long and narrow eyes suddenly grew longer, as though she had reacted to something. She swiftly turned sideways, but no matter how fast her reaction was, but she was still a step too late. That sinister sneer on Ghost Girl's face was already nearing. At the instant when she turned sideways, Qiao Yulu also received a new signal and raised her hand to attack Yi Qing Luo. One at the front and one at the back, the two sides attacked from both sides. Yi Qing Luo had nowhere to hide. Yu Nu's red lips curled into a perfect arc as she gave a tender smile. Yi Qing Luo, you're still defeated in my hands, after all. Her voice was soft and gentle. However, his attacks were so swift and fierce that it caused people's hearts to tremble. An earth-shattering momentum exploded in the air. Yi Qing Luo only felt a bone-piercing chill rising from her spine. Her mind worked quickly. It was too late for him to use his footwork to escape. All she could do was he dodged one attack and endured the other. If she had to choose, she would definitely choose to avoid Yu Nu's attack. However, she had just been hit by Qiao Yulu's palm wind, and her internal organs were still in a damaged state. If he took another palm strike, I'm afraid her 5 viscera and 6 bowels would rupture. Both of them were as fast as lightning. totally not giving Yi Qing Luo any time to think. Yi Qing Luo's pupils contracted slightly. She pursed her lips tightly and could only choose the most beneficial method for herself. Old man Song, protect my heart. Yi Qing Luo said this in her heart. Her body had already swiftly turned towards Yunu, meeting against Yunu's attack. Yi Qing Luo's back was exposed in front of Qiao Yilu. Qiao Yilu's eyes flashed past a gloomy smile. But just as Qiao Yilu used all her strength to take Yi Qing Luo's life, suddenly a gust of gloomy cold wind fluttered and enveloped her palm. Chapter 30, 719. No, it wasn't just a surge of energy. Qiao Yilu sensed in horror that when the cold wind blew over, and a majestic and vigorous energy was rapidly approaching, violent howling, Qiao Yilu could even see the entrance to hell opening up towards her. No, she didn't want to die. Qiao Yilu was terrified. She wanted to retract her hands, which had already attacked. However, the coldness seemed to have frozen her hands and body, making her unable to move at all. At this moment, Qiao Yilu finally understood earlier. Yi Qing Luo knew that danger was approaching, but she could only stand on the spot, passively waiting for the pain to descend. The only difference was Yi Qing Luo was being coerced, standing there to suffer without any resistance, whereas she wanted to hide, but had no strength to hide. A miserable shriek came out from Qiao Yilu's mouth. Qiao Yilu's body suddenly flew backwards, crashing heavily onto the ground. She could even hear the sound of her bones breaking when her body crashed onto the ground. Qiao Yilu's entire face was twisted. Her wide-opened eyes were filled with unconcealable fear, and, Qiao Yilu was overwhelmed with shock. But someone's heart skipped a beat as various emotions of sweetness and astonishment spread in her heart. After asking Old Man Song to protect her heart meridians, Yi Qing Luo originally wanted to forcefully receive Qiao Yilu's attack. However, at the most critical moment, she only felt her waist suddenly tightly. A strong and powerful force tightly hug her waist. Both her feet were in the air as she was brought into a warm embrace. The elegant sandalwood fragrance seeped into her nostrils. It instantly soothed the restlessness and uneasiness in her heart. Yi Qing Luo's heart was instantly lifted. Even her charming eyes were slightly opened in disbelief. It's you," she heard Ghost Girl's panicked voice. Following that was the sound of Ghost Girl escaping in the direction of the other two nethers. Yi Qing Luo was buried in that person's embrace, so she couldn't see the situation, but she could clearly hear the sound of the air ripple in the air. The sound of Ghost Girl escaping had just started, when it suddenly stopped, as though she was intercepted in the middle. Indeed, at the next instant, Yi Qing Luo heard a painful moan. Yi Qing Luo snuggled into that man's arms as she popped out her little head. Ghost Girl was suspended in the air, kicking her legs repeatedly. Her body and neck were tightly bound by an invisible force. Yunu's face turned pale as she opened her mouth and eyes wide, desperately looking towards Yi Qing Luo's direction, hoping to plead for leniency. Meanwhile, a ray of purple profound light shot out from Dark Girl's neck. As the purple light circulated, it enveloped the azure dragon. In an instant, the black fog around the azure dragon dissipated. Then the purple profound light shot towards the half of the head that had swallowed Shiju. Purple light flashed. Shiju's small body was faintly discernible. Jina! After the azure dragon broke free, it immediately rushed towards White Fong's severed head. The dragon eyes nervously stared at the faintly discernible Shiju. Roar! Shiju's small voice sounded normal and didn't seem to be injured. Yi Qing Luo's suspenseful heart was finally suppressed. Her long, curly eyelashes fluttered. Her fingers, which were pressed on the chest of the person who was hugging her, unconsciously curled up. That person's chest was boiling hot, and the rhythmic feeling of his heartbeat was like a drum, beating heavily on her palm. Chapter 37:20. Between her brows, there was a burning sense of warmth and tenderness. She seemed to be confirming something, but also seemed to be in a dream. Cautiously, he raised his eyes and looked at that person's face, under the sky full of flying sand and blood. The man's peerlessly handsome face was still as outstanding as ever. His purple robe billowed, his black hair scattered on his shoulders. The dancing hurricane floated his black hair. The handsome face that could almost captivate one's soul was reflected in the young girl's pupils at close range. The man's eyes were filled with a smile. His peach blossom eyes were full of pampering for the young girl. Their eyes met, as if even the air was seeping with sweetness. Yi Qing Luo's pupils, under the man's pampering gaze, dilated little by little. Her eyelashes were gradually stained with moisture. Her beautiful face was like a peach blossom in March, floating on a cloud. Ah, Xian! The young girl's soft voice was choked with emotion, her arms tightly wrapped around the man's neck, smelling the man's scent, feeling the man's warmth, as if this was the only way to confirm that he had really appeared in front of her, not in the spiritual state, not an illusion, but the real him. The man's arms wrapped around her slender waist, his thin lips slightly hooked, gently falling on her hair. A low and magnetic voice came out of his mouth. Yes, it's me. Ah, Xian! Yi Qing Luo's arms tightened, completely bringing her delicate body into his arms. She had never thought that Dmo Xian would actually appear in Without Embroiling City, and appear in front of her. Obviously, when they were in the Spirit Devourer formation, his spirit body had been affected. They had agreed that she would go to Without Shadow City to look for him. Why did he come to Without Shadow City alone? Then his body. Could it take it? This thought made Yi Qing Luo's heart clench. She suddenly pulled the distance between the two of them and looked up at him carefully. Ah, Xian, are you all right? The man's pampering gaze seemed to be able to squeeze water out of it. Just a glance. Her heart softened and melted. He stared at her face, smiled, and shook his head. Don't worry, you value my body so much. How can I let you worry? Yi Qing Luo looked at him without blinking. She seemed to want to see it in his eyes. He wanted to see if his words were true or false. It was just that he was watching and watching, under the man's gentle, smiling gaze. That soft spot in Yi Qing Luo's heart felt as though it had been hit hard by something. Tears welled up in the corner of her eyes. Don't cry. His voice was gentle, and he sounded a little panicked. His broad and warm fingers covered the corners of her eyes. His slender fingers wiped away the tears at the corner of her eyes. He comforted her in a low voice. I'm really fine. Don't cry. My heart hurts when I see you cry. It was better if the man didn't speak. As soon as he spoke, Yi Qing Luo's eyes widened as tears started to flow down uncontrollably. She suddenly plunged into his arms, grabbed his clothes, and said with a sobbing voice, Fool! Why did he have to force himself? How can I not know about your body's condition? Stay in Shadow City and recuperate your body and wait for me to look for you, all right? She choked with sobs as her tears flowed nonstop. Why are you still acting tough in front of me? Don't cry. The man's voice became even softer. Hot lips, replaced the fingers, fell on her eyes. Chapter 37:21. For you, I've never felt forced. Dmo Xian cupped the young lady's face with both hands. The two of them exchanged glances. His gaze was gentle and loving as he explained dotingly, You're in trouble, and if I'm not around, how will you be able to recuperate in peace? His fingers gently brushed past the stray hairs on her cheek and tucked it behind her ear as he continued, Don't worry, I know what I'm doing. Yi Qing Luo's pink lips pursed tightly. Her tears were still uncontrollable. Her eyes widened as she stared fiercely at Dmo Xian. her eyes filled with rebuke. Dmo Xian's lips curled as he lowered his head and kissed her lips, appeasing the young lady's bellyful of displeasure. His lips were very hot. The scorching heat seemed as though it was going to melt her. The familiar scent and sweetness intertwined. Yi Qing Luo had no strength to resist, nor was she willing to resist. Dmo Xian's appearance made the entire auction's people and monsters all stopped what they were doing. Pairs of gazes converged onto Dmo Xian in unison. Everyone only saw the moment the man appeared. He pulled Yi Qing Luo into his arms, while he raised his palm, as though he had just flicked it in the air. Immediately after, everything in the surroundings were restrained by an invisible force. Ghost Girl was restrained. The evil qi, which trapped the green dragon, was purified. Even White Fan, who had swallowed Shiju, was also forced out of his mouth. What kind of power was this? It was so powerful that he just moved his hand and easily solved the predicament in front of him. The man was treacherous and devilish, like an Asura from hell, holding the power of life and death. Everyone's heart couldn't help but tremble. But what made everyone shocked was that man who was like an Asura killing god faced Yi Qing Luo. His entire person seemed to be plated with a layer of gentle light, as though in his eyes there was only Yi Qing Luo alone. That deep affection, it was filled with love, but this kind of tenderness and pampering appeared on this man. There was no sense of incompatibility at all, just like, for someone as bloodthirsty as him, the gentleness when facing Yi Qing Luo was perfectly justified. Yi Qing Luo. Suddenly, in this treacherous and sweet atmosphere, an icy cold voice broke the atmosphere at this moment. It also called back everyone's will. Even without seeing the owner of the voice, one could feel the coldness in the tone. Hearing this sound, Xiao Yulu, who was lying on the ground with all the bones in her body shattered to the point that she could not get up, suddenly turned her head around. She remembered that when she felt the power of the purple-robed man in front of her had trapped her, she felt a chill run down her spine. He sensed the power of another person. Was it this person? Who could it be? Why were there so many people appearing to save that slut Yi Qing Luo? When Xiao Yilu looked over, it was a man with a cold appearance like an iceberg. His temperament was as cold as ice, and even his eyes were like ice shards. However, he was wearing a long robe that looked like raging flames. The bright red color added a touch of liveliness to the man's expressionless face. Xiao Yulu's pupils shrank. She recognized it. This red-robed man, wasn't he the person in the private room of the Red Clarity Pavilion? In other words, this person was from the Red Clarity Pavilion. Hearing Zhu Wuxin's cold voice, the young lady who was immersed in the joy of charging with her beloved man finally regained her senses. Her cheeks instantly flushed red. Chapter 37:22. But her actions were quickly stopped by Dmo Xian. A slightly cold, jealous voice came close to Yi Qing Luo's ears. Why is he here? Yi Qing Luo's petite body stiffened. He's here to take part in the auction. Before this, I don't know anything. If a certain Overlord's vinegar jar was overturned, the consequences were simply too severe. Oh! The man's ending tone rose, not knowing if he believed Yi Qing Luo's words or not. But the man's dangerous tone told Yi Qing Luo this matter was not over yet. Yi Qing Luo wanted to cry, but no tears came out. Everything about her man was good. It was this sea of vinegar which had a little bit of terror. Don't bother about him first. You're here. Cat and the rest are here too? Yi Qing Luo coughed lightly as she immediately changed the topic. Dmo Xian's peripheral vision shot a glance at the expressionless Zhu Wuxen who was standing not too far away. His thin lips curled slightly as the hand which was encircled around Yi Qing Luo's waist suddenly tightened. His tall figure moved slightly, blocking in front of Yi Qing Luo, blocking Zhu Wuxen's vision. Without waiting for Yi Qing Luo to speak, his eyes drooped as he whispered into her ear, "They're all here. They're very worried about you." Yi Qing Luo's eyes lit up slightly, but following that, she revealed a worried expression. "How did you guys come in? Wasn't the auction hall sealed by an array formation? No one should be able to enter, and no one should be able to leave? Everyone is already in this array. If we can't get out, wouldn't we be trapped here? You don't believe me?" Dmo Xian's slender fingers pinched her nose as he gently pinched it, his eyes filled with adoration. Yi Qing Luo pursed her lips. "I'm very satisfied that you're able to stay by my side and let me see you. I'm worried about your body. Since I'm here, naturally I won't let you worry." His hand slid to her cheek as he gently pinched it. "Don't think that I'm so weak." Yi Qing Luo looked at him fixedly as the tears which she had finally stopped started flowing again. She bit her lower lip hard. Her arms hugged his waist tightly as she buried her head in his arms. "All right, I believe you. So, for the sake of me who is so worried about you, I absolutely cannot let myself get hurt." Dmo Xian's thin lips curled up slightly as he raised his hand and stroked her hair, comforting her in a warm voice. Chu Wuxin looked expressionlessly at the scene before him. He watched as the girl threw herself into the man's arms. A sweet smile appeared on the girl's face. Looking at the young girl's face, it was filled with happiness. His heart felt as if it was being pierced by countless needles. Yi Qing Luo had obviously heard his voice. She would shyly look up at him from the man's arms. Clearly, there was already a shadow of him in her eyes. However, in the next instant, without any hesitation, she threw herself back into the man's arms. That decisiveness, that clear cut, it seemed to be telling him in this way. In this life, the only person she would choose was that man, the man named Dmo Xian. That man who, even when Yi Qing Luo was in a coma, was still lingering in her mouth, calling out incessantly, as she knew. Just now, when Dmo Xian struck out, he also appeared to save her, disregarding the agreement with the secluded palace, just because he wasn't willing to see her get hurt. But in the end, he was still a step too late, just like how he had promised her in the future. But after she grew up, he appeared in front of her a step too late. Chapter 37:23. It was destined that he was one step later than Dmo Xian. Zhu Wuxian slowly shut his icy cold eyes. A sorrowful emotion started to spread around him, but no matter how painful and unbearable his heart was, the expression on his face was so cold. It was as if nothing could affect his emotions and expression. "Death God Castle's Castle Lord." When Yu Ji saw Zhu Wuxian, his expression changed slightly. "You. Why are you here?" He seemed to have thought of something as he speedily looked towards Yi Qing Luo's direction. "You." Zhu Wuxian suddenly opened his eyes. His sinister gaze was as cold as frost. It swept past Yu Ji faintly, like December's ice, brushed past Yu Ji's body. Yu Ji shuddered as the remaining words were stuck in his throat. Yu Han's eyes were slightly red as green veins popped out on her forehead. "Death God Castle's Castle Lord! Although revered and you are no longer working together, but now that you've appeared here and disrupted Revered's plans as a former comrade, isn't it a little inexcusable?" Yu Han's questioning didn't get any response from Zhu Wuxian. Yu Han looked at Yu Ji, who was being held in midair, struggling less and less as she continued anxiously. "Previously, you've already spoiled Revered's plans. If you continue to interfere in this matter, then don't blame Revered for not taking into consideration the relationship between the both of you." But no matter what Yu Han said, Zhu Wuxian didn't even give her a glance. But this noise made Yi Qing Luo notice it. She heard Yu Han's words and looked at Zhu Wuxian as her slender brows creased slightly. Zhu Wuxian had really broken off the collaboration with the mastermind of Nether Palace? Previously, she had intentionally mentioned to him to give up on the collaboration with Nether Palace. At that time, didn't he have that intention? Zhu Wuxian had many things he wanted to do, He needed something from Nether Palace to achieve his own motive. So, Yi Qing Luo did insist. But now, Zhu Wu Exan had really broken off the collaboration with Nether Palace. Then had his motive been achieved? Death God Castle's Castle Lord. Yu Han wanted to continue saying something, but she was interrupted by a sweet voice. The person is in Xian's hands. What are you talking about with Zhu Wu Exan? Yu Han was stunned as she looked at Yi Qing Luo. Yi Qing Luo nestled in Dmo Xian's arms as her lips curled up slightly as she gave a faint smile. This matter has nothing to do with Zhu Wu Exan. Even if you talk till your mouth breaks, it's of no use. Yu Han's face was ashen. Release Yu. Wouldn't it be very embarrassing for Xian to release him just because you said so? Yi Qing Luo raised her brows as her eyes curved into a crescent smile. Moreover, why should I let go of the prey that I've already gotten my hands on? Yi Qing Luo's voice paused. Suddenly, the smile on his face became extremely cold. Even the voice that came out of his mouth was so cold that it made people shiver. She restrained my friends, threatened me, and tried to devour my battle pets. Do you think I would let her go? Yu Han's face instantly turned pale. His body was on the verge of collapsing. Whereas when Yu heard Yi Qing Luo's words, her struggles became even more intense. But Yi Qing Luo started to display her face-changing skills again. Her pink lips curled up, and a brilliant smile bloomed on her face. Her voice also became gentler by a few notches. If you really want to save this beloved woman of yours, then I can. Be merciful and spare her life. She brushed away the stray hair on her cheeks as she laughed lightly. Release the auction's array, and let us leave this array safely. Chapter 37:24. Impossible! Yu Ji shouted sternly. Yu Han clenched her fists tightly as her scarlet eyes stared at him. I can't let anything happen to Yu. Whether she dies or not has nothing to do with me. Yu Ji's expression was cold. Moreover, I don't want to die. He shot a cold glance at Yu's direction as he said, word by word, Don't forget what punishment we will receive if we fail this mission. Yu Han's face suddenly turned pale. Yu Ji continued, I have no opinion if you want to die with her, but don't think of sacrificing me to fulfill your love. Yu Ji's words ended, and his expression instantly turned vicious. He waved his hand as he shouted sternly, Go! Sweep those trash with the fastest speed. After the black-robed men received the order, they started to surge towards the various powerhouses, cultivators in the auction. Boom! Profound energy that could topple mountains and overturn the seas suddenly surged. Various powerhouses, cultivators thought that they were saved. But in the next instance, they were devoured by those black-robed men. Yu Han's eyes were scarlet red as she held onto Yu Ji's wrist. Yu Ji laughed coldly as he shook off Yu Han's hand. If you want to die, then go ahead and die. He absolutely had to survive. Suddenly a painful shriek was heard. Yu Han's pupils constricted. He swiftly looked towards the direction where the sound came from. He saw that Yu, who was originally restrained in midair by an invisible force. Her neck had been replaced by a pale, white finger. Yu cried out in pain. But very quickly, all her voice was strangled in her throat. Yu Han's eyes widened as she looked at Yu, whose face was filled with pain as she screamed. Ugh! Yu stretched out her hand towards Yu Han as she pleaded for help. Yu Han wanted to rush forward, but her wrist was held by Yu Ji. Do you really want to die? Yu Han's eyes were red as she struggled to look at Yu's painful look, as though she didn't notice Yu Ji's obstruction. Since you've already made your choice, then this woman shall be our appetizer. Yi Qing Luo smiled lightly as she looked at Yu Han. The corners of her lips curled up slightly. Her fingers that were clasped around Nether Girl's neck seemed to be casually resting on it. She then lowered her voice and said in a mocking tone, "Your hearts are all black. Both of you are black. Why do you still need to talk about love? You're lying." Yu spat out a few words with difficulty. "He loves me. He will definitely save me." Yi Qing Luo raised her brows. "Really? But why do I feel that he loves himself more than you?" The expression on Ghost Girl's face became increasingly twisted and sinister. She hated Yi Qing Luo's light and indifferent expression. Wasn't it because he had the protection of the Overlord? Didn't he just think that he had the so-called love? Who doesn't have love? Her Yuhan would never give up on her. Yu roared in her heart in a heart-rending manner. However, a certain part of his heart was filled with fear and unease, and it trembled intensely. She didn't know what she was panicking about. Or perhaps she had already guessed something, but wasn't willing to admit it. Yi Qing Luo sneered as she looked at Yuhan with a smile. "On the account that you're in so much pain, I'll give you a chance to choose. The deal that I've mentioned, are you going to agree or not?" Yuhan's scarlet eyes widened as the features on her face distorted. Chapter 37:25. She hadn't even finished her clamorous words. Suddenly, Yuhan's wrist, which was held tightly, loosened. She heard Yu Ji's impatient voice. "If you want to prove your love, then accompany her to die." At that moment, Yuhan became quiet. Yi Qing Luo laughed softly as she looked at Yu's twisted face and smiled. "See, it's not that I don't want to give you a chance to prove your love, but what a pity." Yu's pupils dilated slowly. Her throat suddenly tightened, as though all her breathing was blocked in her throat. She didn't even have time to struggle. Following that, she felt a shapeless flow of air gushing into her internal organs, as though a sharp blade was cutting everything in her body. She struggled and twisted in pain, but there was no way to reduce the pain in her body. She moaned and even wanted to tear her skin apart, to expel the tearing pain in her body. Suddenly, her throat seemed to be pulled by some gas. She cried out in pain. "Ah!" She was in pain venting. Her mouth kept on screaming Yuhan's name, not knowing when Yi Qing Luo had let go of her. She floated in midair, screaming and struggling in pain. She couldn't take it. Her body wriggled as she looked at Yuhan. "Save me! Yuhan, save me!" But that man who kept saying that he loved her. However, when his eyes met hers, he slowly moved his head away. Yuhan didn't move. He had no intention to save her. Yu Ji didn't hold him back at all. It was him who had already given up on her. Yu's screams gradually stopped. In her mind, the words which Yi Qing Luo said to her ears inexplicably rang. "Your hearts are all black. Why do you need to talk about love?" That's right. All black. They were all selfish. The so-called talk about love, the so-called pledge of eternal love. Totally not suitable for people like them. So painful. So painful. Yu couldn't tell if it was Yuhan's giving up which made her heart ache, or the flow of air in her internal organs which made her feel pain, just as the pain was eroding her, causing her to lose focus. Suddenly, Ghost Girl felt her floating body being pulled into a warm embrace. That warmth seemed to ease the torturous pain in her body. Yu's heart tightened. Joy spread from the bottom of his heart. Yuhan, she knew it. Yuhan would never give up on her so easily. However, the moment she slowly lifted her gaze, his gaze landed on the figure. Her joyful expression froze on her face. It's you. Yu spoke in a hoarse voice that was filled with surprise. The man who was holding her was dressed in a loose black robe that covered his entire body. Only from Yu's angle could she see the man's face under the black robe. In particular, she could clearly see the man's red eyes. The man frowned, his black robe fluttering in the wind. It was as if he was suffering from some great pain. The dark maiden stared blankly at the man. He also saw it clearly when the man was hugging her. He had to endure the corrosion of the surrounding barrier. That was the enchantment which Yi Qing Luo had set up. She wanted the people from the secluded palace, one of the various powerhouses, cultivators, to watch her die in agony. He actually disregarded the corrosion of the enchantment and charged right in front of her. "I'm sorry I wasn't able to save you." The man's voice was filled with guilt as the hand which was hugging Yu Nu tightened. Yu Nu trembled. It was the pain in her body. Chapter 37:26. "You Ming, you're so silly." Yu Nu grinned as she laughed softly. The moment she laughed, a big mouthful of blood gushed out from her mouth. It was accompanied by a painful cough, but she was still laughing. She raised her hand and placed it on the man's face. But before her hand could reach the man, her body convulsed violently. The light in her eyes was extinguished bit by bit. The hand that was raised also drooped down weakly. A teardrop rolled down from the corner of her eye. No one knew if this teardrop was complaining about her lack of understanding of people, or was it the guilt towards the man. Once Yu Nu died, the surrounding enchantment was removed. The man carried the person in his arms as he slowly landed on the ground. His eyes were looking at the person in his arms, whose eyes were shut. On the surface it was calm, but his inner heart was already in turmoil. "Yu Ming!" Yu Han pounced over as she stared fiercely at this man who suddenly appeared, as she shouted sternly, "Hand Yu Nu's corpse to me!" Yu Ming ignored her. Yu Han pounced forward as she stretched out her hand to snatch Yu Nu. Before she could get close, Yu Ming kicked her chest. Scram! Yu Han was not prepared as she was kicked to the ground. He flipped over like a carp and stood up. "Netherworld, Yu Nu is my woman. The person she loves is me. I believe, even if she dies, she wants to die in my arms." "Yu Han." Yu Ming slowly raised his head. Under the black robe, that pair of scarlet eyes gave off a shocking cold glint. "The person who has the least right to say this is you." His voice was icy cold, filled with viciousness. "Obviously you could save her, but for your own life, you gave up on her. Such a selfish person. What right do you have to touch her?" Yu Han was stunned by Yu Ming's eyes, but looking at Yu Nu in Yu Ming's arms, her heart felt especially upset. Yu Han naturally liked Yu Nu. So many years of feelings, it couldn't be faked. But between love and his own life, he chose himself. Yi Qing Luo's conditions, he couldn't possibly agree to it. Even if Yu Ji didn't stop him, he couldn't possibly agree to it. In Nirvana Realm, their ghost hands, 5 Yu had failed time and time again. If they failed this mission again, the Venerable would definitely take their lives, and he would use the cruelest way to punish their incompetence. "TSK. Xian, I'm right, aren't I? Your heart is black, and so is your love life." A clear and melodious voice rang out lightly. That laughter was filled with ridicule and ridicule. Yu Han's face instantly turned ashen, and a sinister black aura appeared between her brows. Following the girl's voice, Yu Ming slowly looked over. Yi Qing Luo calmly waved at Yu Ming. "Long time no see." Yu Ming lowered his head and took a look at Yu Nu in his arms before raising his head and meeting Yi Qing Luo's gaze. His scarlet eyes seemed to be burning with a sea of fire. Seeing this, Yu Han's eyes flashed. "Yu Ming, now is not the time to be calculative. You're also a member of the secluded palace, and your most beloved secluded maiden had died in Yi Qing Luo's hands. Even if it's to avenge Yu Nu, you should help." The Netherworld did not speak. "I know you have the Netherworld mirror. You just need to use the Netherworld mirror to control the Venerable Sovereign. We'll take care of the rest." Yu Han added. He bumped Yu Ji again. Yu Ji's face darkened, but he thought about their mission and the nether mirror in Yu Ming's hand. Chapter 37:27. As Yu Ji spoke, he sized up Yu Ming's expression. Ghost Maiden's pain was caused by Yi Qing Luo. "You love Ghost Maiden so deeply. You will definitely avenge her, right? Yu Ji and Yu Han had been persuading him for a long time. Yu Ming, who had been silent like a stone statue, finally moved. He carried Ghost Maiden's corpse as he slowly moved a few steps. He faced Yu Ji and Yu Han's direction. His face was expressionless, his eyes indifferent. "You're right, I should avenge Ghost Maiden." His voice was very soft, so soft that if one didn't listen carefully, they wouldn't be able to hear what he said. Yu Ji and Yu Han's eyes lit up instantly. Yu Ming carried Ghost Maiden as he slowly walked towards Yu Han's direction. He walked very slowly. As he walked, he lowered his eyes to look at the person in his arms, that blood on the corner of her mouth, that painful expression even in death. A trace of treachery flashed past his scarlet eyes. On the other side, everyone who saw this scene had a grave expression. "Luo, who is that person?" From their tone, they seemed to have something that can restrain us. Qiao Yinyan frowned as he asked solemnly. His vision seemed to sweep past the man beside Yi Qing Luo. It wasn't hard to sense that the man had enmity towards him, especially when he shouted out the two words, Luo. That man's icy cold gaze seemed as though it was going to freeze him into ice. That man was Luo's fiancé? In other words, the legendary Honorable Dizun? Qiao Yinyan's feeling wasn't wrong. Mo Xian not only had enmity towards him, he didn't even allow Yi Qing Luo to talk to him. Just as Yi Qing Luo was about to reply, Mo Xian suddenly clasped Yi Qing Luo's waist tightly as he spoke in a cold voice. "Trying to restrain me? I can exterminate them any time." Finishing his words, he lowered his eyes and looked at Yi Qing Luo tenderly. "Since one is already dead, why don't we kill them all, Yi Qing Luo? Only Di San Sui would be jealous in such a Chinibi way in this world." This was called showing off his power in front of his love rival. Was he going to use his domineering aura to overwhelm his love rival? Yi Qing Luo gave Mo Xian a stare, using her eyes to warn him not to be jealous before she opened her mouth. Yu Ming is not someone who can't see things clearly. Furthermore, the underworld mirror which Yu Han mentioned is in my hands. Back in the 21st century, she had taken the underworld mirror from Netherworld's hand and made it hers. Yu Han's plan was going to fail. Furthermore, although she had not spent much time with the Netherworld, but Yi Qing Luo more or less understood Yu Ming's character. She did not think that Netherworld would attack her in order to avenge Netherworld's death. Yi Qing Luo shot a glance at Yu Ming, who was walking towards the cold, and retracted her line of sight. She pulled away Mo Xian's long body, which was deliberately blocking in front of her, and looked behind Qiao Yinyan at the unconscious Pei Sheng. "How is Sheng?" Ever since Pei Sheng's eruption had sent Pharaoh he flying, Qin Wintian's expression had changed. Pei Sheng fainted. Fortunately, Qiao Yinyan reacted quickly and dragged Pei Sheng to a safe place in time. Otherwise, Pei Sheng would definitely have become the target of those dead puppets. Qiao Yinyan shook his head. He's not awake yet. Perhaps the sudden eruption of energy had exceeded the limits of his body, and his body is unable to take it. Yi Qing Luo didn't feel that it was because it had exceeded the limits of his body. Earlier Pei Sheng's eruption, she also sensed it. On the contrary, she felt. Chapter 37:28. Yi Qing Luo expressed that they were still considered lucky. Mo Xian rushed over in time. The pressing crisis had all been resolved. Pei Sheng had profited from the misfortune and had the opportunity to advance. Azure Dragon and Shiju were fine. Now, they only needed to think of a way to break the auction's array, to let more people leave the auction, to stop the Palace of Darkness's plot. Yu Han looked at Yu Ming, who was nearing, as her eyes were filled with disdain. But the expression and tone on her face was filled with a trace of flattery and comfort. "Yu Ming, pass Yu Nu's corpse to me first. After this matter is over, I will bury her at her favorite place." Saying that, He stretched out both hands towards Yu Ming, wanting to receive Yu Nu. But his hands had just stretched out. Suddenly, he felt a piercing pain in his chest. The smile on his face froze. Yu Ming. Yu Han's voice was hoarse as she groaned in pain. He slowly lowered his head, only to see a hand pressing against his left chest. That hand, half of it had already entered into his body. It was so easy to hold his heart. Blood gushed out, dyeing Yu Ming's black robe red. Yu Ming, what are you doing? Yu Ji also reacted as he berated sternly. But looking at the expressionless Yu Ming, who was doing such a bloody scene, he didn't dare to step forward to stop him. His heart was being held tightly. This kind of pain was simply indescribable. Yu Han's painful face turned pale as her eyes widened, filled with doubt and puzzlement. Yu Ming met Yu Han's questioning gaze indifferently as he said, word by word, "What you said is right. I should take revenge for Yu Nu. The person who forced Yu Nu to her death is you." Saying that, he grinned again as he laughed lowly. That insincere smile and that treacherous laughter, it was like a combination of lunatics. Yu Han only felt goosebumps all over, as she was extremely terrified. Yu Nu loves you so much. She's dead. How can you live on alone? I can't let Yu Nu stay in this icy cold hell alone. He was still laughing, but the words that came out of his mouth made one's hair stand. No, I don't want. Bam! The last word, death. Yu Han didn't manage to say it out. The 5 fingers on his heart suddenly tightened. His heart was crushed. Blood splattered. His stiff body was mercilessly thrown aside. Yu Ming slowly lowered his hand. Blood was flowing from his fingers. He looked down at the woman in his arms and chuckled softly. I'm sorry, I can't bear to let you walk the Yellow Springs road alone. I know you don't want me to accompany you, so I'll send your most beloved to accompany you. Yu Ming, are you crazy? Yu Ji looked at Yu Ming in disbelief. The netherworld hand was bleeding. His expressionless face made it seem as if he was not the one who had crushed Yu Han's heart. Yu Ji felt that, in the next instant, it was very likely that he would come and pinch his heart. When Yu Ming raised his head and stared straight at him, Yu Ming's eyes were fixed on him. Yu Ji subconsciously took a few steps back. Didn't you want to avenge Yu Nu? Yu Nu was killed by Yi Qing Luo. Yu Nu's death was so painful, and it's all because of Yi Qing Luo. Yu Ji's eyes were filled with panic as he hurriedly opened his mouth. However, Yu Ming continued to stare at him. His gaze was as if he was looking at a dead thing. In the 5 underworlds, it was undeniable that Yu Ming's ability was the strongest. But it was because Yu Ming's eyes were different from ordinary people, and his innate talent was the strongest. Chapter 37:29. They and Yu Ming hadn't met each other for so many years. Yu Ji felt that he had matured a lot, but when facing Yu Ming, he still had an instinctive fear in his heart. Amen, I'm taking revenge for her. Yu Ming looked straight at Yu Ji as his voice was calm. Yu Ji took another step back. Are you mistaken about the target of your revenge? Yu Ming laughed. Yi Qing Luo is someone who keeps her promises. Earlier, if you had agreed to her request, Yu Nu wouldn't have died. You're insane. When Yu Ji heard Yu Ming's explanation, he was so infuriated that his face turned pale and instantly turned steely green. If we let them go, the Overlord will not let us off. In the end, we still have to die. So you'd better go and die. Yu Ming totally didn't listen to Yu Ji's explanation. As though he had lost Yu Nu, he had lost the intention to live. Anyway, the 3 of you have always been together. On the road to the netherworld, walk together. Yu Ji stared at Yu Ming, knowing that Yu Ming's current situation could be said to be beyond cure. His eyes sunk, and his figure suddenly leapt towards the direction of the black-robed man, hiding his figure in the crowd. Immediately after, he commanded sternly, "Speed up! You must complete the mission!" The black-robed man let out a beast-like howl as he roared and charged towards those various powerhouses' cultivators. Yu Ming only sneered as he looked towards the direction of Yu Ji and those black-robed men. His lips curled into a sinister smile. Immediately after, he turned around and carried Yu Nu towards Yi Qing Luo. Along the way, the blood on his fingers dripped all the way. He looked even more like a lunatic than Old Lai. Qiao Yinyan, executive elder, and the others subconsciously tensed up their emotions as they stared at him vigilantly, until Yu Ming's footsteps stopped 5 steps away from Yi Qing Luo. Compared to the tensed emotions of the people around him, Yi Qing Luo's expression looked much more relaxed and calm. Yu Ming stared at Yi Qing Luo for some time as he frowned. You seem certain that I won't stand on their side. Indeed, Yi Qing Luo didn't deny it. You're not an idiot. Moreover, you understand their temperament better than anyone else. Netherworld pursed his lips, and a ripple appeared in his calm eyes. But I actually hate you in my heart. I know. Yi Qing Luo smiled, but I don't mind. After all, she was the one who killed the ghost girl. Regardless of the reason, he, who loved Nethergirl, definitely wanted to avenge her. Yu Ming's eyes became dark and gloomy, and his face became slightly hazy. I really want to kill you. Yi Qing Luo scoffed, saying such words to me in front of my man. Do you really want to go down and accompany your beloved woman? Yu Ming took a look at DMO Xian and kept his mouth shut with a black face. Towards Yu Ming's hatred, Yi Qing Luo expressed her understanding. She was also certain that Netherworld would absolutely not make a move against her for now, rather than hating her. The Netherworld should hate the Palace of Darkness and that so-called Venerable Moor. Yi Qing Luo's brows rose. You intend to hug her corpse and fight with your life on the line against the secluded palace? Take out the nether mirror, Yu Ming said calmly. Yi Qing Luo laughed. The nether mirror is mine now. Are you trying to snatch it back? Borrow, use. Yu Ming's words seemed to be squeezed out from the gaps of his teeth. Yi Qing Luo was satisfied as she threw the nether mirror to Yu Ming. She had already signed the blood pact with the nether mirror, so she wasn't worried that Yu Ming had a way to snatch the nether mirror back. Chapter 37:30. But he totally didn't bother about it. Yi Qing Luo clicked her tongue. As expected, he couldn't be bothered to care for something that didn't belong to him. That bloodied hand was afraid of dirtying Ghost Maiden, so he didn't even dare to touch her. When he held onto the underworld mirror, he couldn't care less. Man, Yi Qing Luo ridiculed in her heart. But her eyes were fixated on Yu Ming's actions. There were many functions of the underworld mirror that she didn't understand. It was not practical to ask Yu Ming about it. She could only rely on herself to explore and learn secretly. Yu Ming held the underworld mirror and stared at Ghost Maiden for a long time, as though he wanted to imprint Ghost Maiden's face firmly in his mind. After a moment of silence, his fingers suddenly clenched the underworld mirror tightly as he shut his eyes tightly. The underworld mirror was aimed at Ghost Maiden. A white light flashed. Ghost Maiden's figure disappeared into Yu Ming's arms. Yu Ming held the underworld mirror tightly as he stared at the smooth mirror. His brows were filled with pain and struggle. He slowly raised his head and looked at Yi Qing Luo. Before the battle ends, can you leave the underworld mirror with me? Although she didn't see clearly what Yu Ming did, but she could roughly guess. Yu Ming borrowed the power of the underworld mirror to temporarily preserve Ghost Maiden's corpse. Yi Qing Luo didn't understand and couldn't understand why Yu Ming was so dead set on Yu Nu. But as a woman who was addicted to dating the Overlord, she understood Yu Ming very well. All right, but this counts as you owe me a favor, so you can only use the array entrance to open the auction to repay this favor. Yi Qing Luo agreed straightforwardly. Yu Ming took a look at her and shifted his gaze away, not replying to her. Apparently, he didn't want to bother with her. Yi Qing Luo didn't pursue for an answer. Anyway, if Yu Ming couldn't do it, he would always owe her a favor. Qiao Yinyan stared at Yu Ming and sized him up for a long time before asking in a low voice, "Can this person be trusted?" He could tell that the relationship between Yu Ming and the secluded palace wasn't ordinary. Yi Qing Luo nodded. "Temporarily we can trust him, but we still have to be careful." Elder A was slightly worried. "Since we can't be sure of his safety, why help him? What if he attacks us while we're not paying attention?" "Not for the time being." Yi Qing Luo was originally too lazy to explain, but under the current situation, she needed to appease them. She thought for a while and explained the reason in a simple manner. He has a deep grudge against the Palace of Darkness and was once a member of the Palace of Darkness. He is very powerful. If he can help us temporarily, it will be a great help. Most importantly, he might have a way to break this formation. Executive Elder A's expression was very complicated, but he did not continue to ask. "Let's hold off the monster's attacks for now. We're losing more and more people." Yi Qing Luo changed the topic. "In the auction, various powerhouses' elites will suffer losses, and this will have a huge impact on their powerhouses. After the matter ends, there is a possibility that they will blame the losses on the auction." Her gaze swept past the executive elder and the Linglong Palace's hall master, who had a dark expression on his face. "The few of you may have to bear full responsibility." Everyone's faces turned pale in an instant. Yi Qing Luo had already said so. They didn't dare to waste any more time. The more they lost, it was even more disadvantageous for them. The entire auction was filled with profound radiance, as various kinds of techniques filled the sky. The people around them had already joined the battle. Yi Qing Luo patted Dmo Xian's hand, which was placed on her waist. Claws. Chapter 3731. Yi Qing Luo expressed that she couldn't see the man's grievances. She walked past Dmo Xian and walked slowly to Pei Sheng's side. The surrounding battle was too intense. If Qiao Yinyan kept paying attention to Pei Sheng, it would affect his battle power. But if she ignored Pei Sheng, the people from Gloomy Palace would definitely think of ways to deal with Pei Sheng again. After all, they were very clear. They could use Pei Sheng to threaten her. Yi Qing Luo took Pei Sheng's pulse and confirmed that he was fine. She thought for a moment and said to Yu Ming, "Use the underworld mirror to keep Pei Sheng in." Yu Ming frowned. Ghost Girl is inside. Separate. She wouldn't let Pei Sheng lie together with a corpse, especially that corpse was a lady. If Gu Zishi found out about this, wouldn't she be filled with jealousy? Yu Ming's brows creased even tighter as he remained silent for a moment before he unwillingly walked over with the underworld mirror. The few people beside him stared at Yu Ming with vigilance. Yu Ming didn't mind as he walked to Yi Qing Luo's side. "Move aside!" Yi Qing Luo obeyed as she stood up and moved aside. Yu Ming pointed the underworld mirror towards Pei Sheng. A flash of white light suddenly flickered. But the truth didn't look like what Yi Qing Luo had seen when Ghost Girl's body disappeared. Pei Sheng, who was lying on the ground, didn't disappear. Instead, he moved. First, his fingers shook. Immediately following that, his body started to move slowly. Yu Ming took a step back with the underworld mirror, and his expression congealed as he looked at Pei Sheng in astonishment. "Who is this friend of yours? He can actually counter the power of the underworld mirror." Counter the power of the underworld mirror? Yi Qing Luo was shocked. His consciousness refused to enter the underworld mirror. Yu Ming kept the underworld mirror. "This is my first time encountering such a situation. Your friend is very powerful." "You mean Brother Pei's ability is very powerful?" Qiao Yinyan seemed to doubt his own ears when he heard that. Yu Ming took a look at Qiao Yinyan and replied calmly, "Yes, generally speaking, there aren't many who can resist the power of the underworld mirror, even she." Yu Ming pointed at Yi Qing Luo and continued, "I'm afraid she can't resist the power of the underworld mirror." Qiao Yinyan's expression was complicated. Shang is indeed extraordinary. Yi Qing Luo pursed her lips. Earlier, when he was restrained by Pharaoh, the power which he exploded out was extremely strong. Yi Qing Luo half squatted down and was about to stretch out her hand to take Pei Sheng's pulse. But just as he stretched out his hand, a large palm suddenly grabbed her wrist. That palm was extremely powerful. Yi Qing Luo's wrist was in pain. In the next instant, Pei Sheng's body suddenly straightened. His eyes were tightly shut as he faced Yi Qing Luo, emitting a kind of powerful aura which was about to erupt like a volcano. Yi Qing Luo frowned and was about to open her mouth. The man who was facing him suddenly opened his eyes. It was a pair of golden eyes. That's right, gold. Although it was not pure gold, there was also a hint of dark gold. But when Pei Sheng's eyes met with Yi Qing Luo's heart was still shaken. Those eyes, why did she look so familiar? Why do I feel like I've seen him somewhere before? Brother Pei. Qiao Yinyan's voice interrupted Yi Qing Luo's thoughts. Qiao Yinyan was already squatting in between him and Pei Sheng as he stretched out his hand and placed it on Pei Sheng's hand. You're hurting Luo. Pei Sheng's hand was still holding on to Yi Qing Luo's wrist tightly. The force had no intention of lessening. Yi Qing Luo was just about to say that it was all right. Suddenly, he felt something tighten around his waist. Her feet left the ground as she fell into a warm embrace. Chapter 37-32. Xian. Yi Qing Luo's arms immediately encircled the man's neck. The man clasped her waist tightly and looked at Pei Sheng and Qiao Yinyan in an unfriendly manner. It's all right. Sheng just woke up and his mind isn't clear. Yi Qing Luo comforted him with a smile as her little hand caressed the man's face and used her fingers to wipe away his smile. Mo Xian's expression was still gloomy. Yi Qing Luo felt that this time round, San Sui's vinegar jar was getting more and more sour. Not only sour, it was developing towards 2 years old. Yi Qing Luo changed the topic. Xian, have you realized that Sheng's eyes seem rather familiar, as if I have seen it somewhere before? You seem to be especially concerned about that kid called Pei Sheng? Mo Xian lowered his eyelids as his peach blossom eyes locked onto Yi Qing Luo. His slightly lowered voice was obviously oppressive. Yi Qing Luo. All right, this change of topic made San Sui even more jealous. At this moment, a frivolous voice came from behind. Overlord, you will easily lose Qing Luo in this way. Following that, Yi Qing Luo saw Mo hugging Kitty Li as he walked towards them. Behind them was an expressionless ghost martial artist. When the three of them walked over, and even staged a mime, when Kitty Li saw Yi Qing Luo, her pair of animated eyes lit up. She wanted to rush over, but she was hugged tightly by Mo. Kitty Li turned her head and stared at Mo with her claws and fangs bared. However, Mo patted her head and whispered something into her ear. This caused Kitty Li's cheeks to turn red. After that, she nestled in Mo's arms and stopped struggling. This scene unknowingly stuffed a mouthful of dog food into Yi Qing Luo's mouth. Yi Qing Luo expressed her heartache. Her Kitty Li had really been taken over by a fox. How long had it been? Kitty Li was subdued by the fox. After the mime ended, the three of them approached Yi Qing Luo and the rest. Mo Xian raised his brows at Mo Xian as he squinted his bewitching phoenix eyes and sloppily continued the topic earlier. Men, your possessiveness cannot be too strong. Qing Luo has her own rights to make friends, and as Qing Luo's man, how can you put on that attitude towards her friends? You still have to learn from this young master what is called a man's way of life. Mo Xian abruptly shifted his gaze as he stared at Mo with an icy, cold gaze. His eyes were surging with billowing waves. A chill ran down Mo's spine, and he tucked his tail between his legs. But his mouth was still unwilling to admit defeat as he raised his eyes towards Yi Qing Luo. Qing Luo, do you think what I said is right or not? Yi Qing Luo. Why did he bring the topic back to her again? This was a suicidal question. Yi Qing Luo was just about to open her mouth, but she met Dmo Xian's serious and solemn gaze. From Dmo Xian's eyes, she could tell. Dmo Xian was also asking her, was Zhou Mo right? Yi Qing Luo. Taking a deep breath, she pursed her pink lips and looked at Zhou Mo with a smile. Enunciating each word, she asked, I dislike it when my man gets jealous and cares about my looks. I spoil him. So what? Jealous? Following that, her gaze shifted downwards as she looked at Kitty Lee, and her smile became even sweeter. Kitty Lee, since young Master Mo wants to learn a man's way of life, then you should follow what he said and tell him what is called a man's real way of life. Zhou Mo's face turned pale in an instant, before he could even hug Kitty Lee tightly. Chapter 37-33. Kitty Lee looked at him righteously and said, You said it yourself. You can't be too possessive. A kitty has the right to make friends. Kitty wanted to be with her beloved big sister. If you really love cats, then you should satisfy them. Zhou Mo, damn it, lifting a rock only to smash one's own foot. So it hurt so much. Yi Qing Luo's brows rose as she looked at him with a smile which didn't look like a smile. Ha, isn't it fun to be mischievous? Are you still naughty? Kitty Lee leaned in front of Yi Qing Luo as her big eyes blinked, looking at Dmo Xian, who was like a stone statue, standing motionless by the side. After that, it looked at Yi Qing Luo adorably. Sister, Cat misses you so much. As he spoke, he opened his arms, looking like he was asking for a hug. Success made Dmo Xian's face darken. Yi Qing Luo didn't miss the crafty smile in Kitty Lee's eyes. Good job. How long had her cute and innocent little kitten spent with Zhou Mo, that sly fox? Did she become a little naughty cat? She even dared to tease her brother-in-law, the Overlord. However, even if Yi Qing Luo's heart was cursing Li Mao's transformation. But looking at Kitty Lee's cute little face, Yi Qing Luo pushed her man away without any hesitation and turned around to embrace Kitty Lee's petite body into her arms. Well, it's been a long time. Just to satisfy his willful little sister's bad taste. While satisfying Kitty Lee, Yi Qing Luo also paid attention to her man's emotions. After hugging Kitty Lee for a while, she let go of Kitty Lee and whispered, Be good. Then she coughed lightly. Let's think of a way to break this formation first. Then we'll find a place to reminisce. The evil Yin energy in the surroundings is getting denser and denser. If this goes on, the profound practitioners of the various powers might be affected by the evil Yin energy. Kitty Lee acted coquettishly, unwilling to leave Yi Qing Luo. However, she was still dragged back into Zhou Mo's arms. Yi Qing Luo smiled like a flower as she hugged Dmo Xian's waist again, her chin resting on his chest as she beamed. Xian is so incredible. There must be a way, right? It was just a smile. One took the initiative to throw herself into his arms. The gloomy expression on the man's face brightened up. Luo. Qiao Yinyan waited for Yi Qing Luo to finish her conversation with her old friend before calling out. Yi Qing Luo looked over. Qiao Yinyan raised his chin in Pei Sheng's direction. Brother Pei seems a little off. I don't know what's going on. I tried talking to him, but he didn't respond. As soon as Pei Sheng woke up, his reaction of grabbing her arm was indeed very strange. Yi Qing Luo pulled Dmo Xian along as they neared Pei Sheng. Pei Sheng sat on the ground. His body was stiff and he sat up straight. His arm was still bent in the same position as when he was grabbing her wrist. Even those golden eyes remained the same as before. What was going on? Yi Qing Luo's slender brows creased slightly as she pulled Dmo Xian to a half-squat position. She tentatively reached out to Pei Sheng. He waved it in front of Pei Sheng and called out softly, Sheng! The eyelashes of the man, who was stunned on the spot, trembled. Suddenly, he shifted his line of sight towards Yi Qing Luo. Yi Qing Luo. Didn't we agree? Why didn't he respond? Chao Inyen. He was also very shocked. Could it be that Brother Pei despised him, so he didn't give him any response? Dmo Xian. Give you a look, feel it yourself. Pei Sheng stared at Yi Qing Luo in a daze. Under the dim, golden pupils, Yi Qing Luo's face was reflected. Chapter 37-34. Yi Qing Luo didn't know what kind of expression she should use to express her inner F*** feelings at this moment. Brother Pei, it's easy for people to misunderstand you. Think about your little sister Zishi. Yi Qing Luo could clearly feel the low pressure coming from the man beside her. Yi Qing Luo felt her throat itching again. She coughed a few times and looked at Pei Sheng calmly. How are you? I don't know. Pei Sheng raised his arms, his eyes filled with confusion. I feel that my body is different from before. It's as if I have inexhaustible strength, he blinked his golden eyes and said. There seems to be a voice in my head, urging me to fight to my heart's content. Yi Qing Luo stared at Pei Sheng's face for a long time. Then he said, Oh! He glanced at the battlefield not far away and said, Go fight! Pei Sheng clenched his fists and felt the power in his body. However, his eyes were still filled with confusion and uncertainty. Can I really do it? You have to believe in your own strength. Yi Qing Luo withstood the enormous pressure as she patted Pei Sheng's shoulder. Don't tell me you don't want to leave this place. Don't want to return to the Treasures Exchange Hall. Don't want to stay by Zishi's side and watch her wake up. No one knew if he had mentioned Ju Bao or Zishi's name. The perplexed man's eyes flickered a few times and became more resolute. Yi Qing Luo retracted her hand and continued. Haven't I said this before? Zishi will either wake up today or tomorrow. If she knew that you were trapped in the auction's array, what would she do? If she forced her way into the auction in order to find you, you should know very well how dangerous it is inside. Pei Sheng suddenly raised his head. His clenched fist seemed to be surrounded by a thin layer of profound light, although it was not obvious. However, his aura was extremely strong. He looked at the battlefield. Blood dyed the ground. It was a brutal and ruthless scene. His eyes gradually became sharp. Yi Qing Luo pulled Dmo Xian as she slowly stood up and gave him an encouraging smile. Go on. An afterimage flashed before his eyes. The man's figure had already rushed into the battlefield. His speed was as fast as lightning. Pei Sheng joined the battle. At first, he wasn't used to it. However, after swinging his fists and punching the black-robed men one by one, the black-robed men exploded. Gradually, he found the feeling. Moreover, he noticed that his attacks were different from the other profounders. The attacks of the other profound practitioners did not affect the black-robed man in the slightest. At most, he could only hinder the other party's movements. However, his attack and the profound strength that he released, he could completely suppress the black-robed man. Although it was not to the extent of destroying the other party, it could also make the black-robed man lose the ability to fight. Yi Qing Luo saw Pei Sheng getting braver and braver as she retracted her vision. She felt like an old mother watching her son go to the battlefield. She sighed and stuffed herself into Dmo Xian's arms and said, Did you hear that? He has other ladies in his heart, and he treats me as his benefactor. Did I say anything? Dmo Xian raised his brows and asked, Yi Qing Luo. Indeed, he didn't say anything, but could you control your expression before asking back? Dmo Xian suddenly suppressed his voice as he gave a smile, which didn't look like a smile but was filled with danger. You're in such a hurry to explain to me. Looks like you and him really. Yi Qing Luo directly raised her fist and pounded on her chest as she turned around and left. Go be jealous if you like. I'm not going to serve you anymore. Chapter 37-35. Humph. Don't think that she didn't know what he was thinking. Wasn't he intentionally finding trouble, waiting for her to coax him? His ultimate motive was to let her use the way he wanted to satisfy him, to compensate him. Men. She had long seen through his little tricks. Coax him. He now come and coax her obediently. After Yi Qing, Luo charged into the battlefield. Azure Dragon and Shiju followed closely behind. After Azure Dragon charged into the battlefield, he let out an angry roar. Following that, he turned into a huge dragon body as his dragon's breath spewed out and his tail swayed. A bunch of black-robed men were smashed into pieces. The entire auction sky and the surrounding air was filled with a terrifying hurricane. In fact, the spirit formation barrier that enveloped the auction hall was trembling non-stop from the Azure Dragon's berserk power. Large tracts of air waves were like ripples on the surface of a lake as it rippled in circles. The auction fell into a state of violent shaking. Even the ground began to crack like a spider's web, with countless fine cracks densely packed together. It showed that Azure Dragon was really infuriated. Shiju was Azure Dragon's reverse scale. Sir Yuji, what should we do? Pharaoh, he dodged left and right to avoid the flying broken stones as he looked at Yuji, who had a gloomy expression as he asked anxiously. Yuji stared at Azure Dragon viciously without replying, but his expression and the tensed muscles on his body could be seen. His current emotions were already on the verge of exploding. They had obviously done all the preparations. They could totally wipe out this bunch of trash from the Earth domain. Yet such an accident happened. Obviously, the Overlord couldn't possibly appear here. They specially separated the Overlord and Yi Qing Luo so that they could deal with Yi Qing Luo alone. Obviously, Death God Castle's castle lord couldn't possibly appear here. But unfortunately, Zhu Wu Xian appeared just like that, and he even stood on Yi Qing Luo's side in an absolutely protective manner. Full of confidence, he brought his corpse puppets to the auction to carry out a massacre. He had not expected that before it even started. Out of their 3 nether, 2 of them were dead. Now, in the ghost hands, 5 nether. There were only him and Yu Ming left. But Yu Ming was obviously planning to betray the Palace of Darkness. It could be said that this mission, they had suffered a huge loss. If this went on, this mission might really fail. His eyes suddenly darkened. No, he absolutely could not fail. Those fools were not afraid of death. But he didn't want to die. Yuji narrowed his eyes as if he had made a decision. Then he looked at Pharaoh Crane. Do you want to live? Pharaoh Crane nodded vigorously. Didn't they join the Palace of Gloomy Darkness to survive? Do you still remember the conditions of the deal between the Dark Organization and the Nether Palace? Yuji asked. Pharaoh He's expression froze, and the muscles on his face twitched. Finally, he said, I remember. The Palace of Darkness will help us take revenge and reform the dark forces. They will also help us awaken the King of Darkness at his peak. He paused and said the next sentence with difficulty and reluctance. If the Palace of Darkness can do it, we, the dark forces, will all surrender to the leader of the Palace of Darkness and become a part of the Palace of Darkness. As long as you remember. Yuji pursed his lips. After this mission is completed, bring me to the King of Darkness's resting place. Pharaoh Crane's expression stiffened. So fast? Are you prepared to awaken the King of Darkness? Chapter 37-36. Pharaoh, he quickly lowered his head. No, I wouldn't dare. Yuji gave a cold harumph. Yi Qing Luo has too many helpers by her side. Palace of Secluded Darkness also needs to develop their helpers. Awakening the King of Darkness will give us an additional helping hand. After saying that, he made the final decision. It's decided. After we leave the auction, we will head to the King of Darkness's resting place. Pharaoh Crane was very nervous. However, when he saw Yuji's impatient expression, he nodded in the end. Yes. The Pharaoh of the Dark Forces, who was once high and mighty. With a wave of his arm, tens of thousands of people responded. But now he had to rely on others to survive. This was a great humiliation to Pharaoh He and the Dark Forces. It was not that Yu did not notice the unwillingness in Pharaoh's eyes. He just couldn't be bothered. Ever since the Dark Forces joined the Abyss Palace, the Dark Forces were just a tool to be used. Want to make a comeback? That was impossible. Yu's eyes flashed past a glint of disdain, but the words he said were still in a normal conversational tone. Keep a close eye on the Overlord and Death God Castle Lord. Today's mission absolutely cannot fail. I'll go deal with Yi Qing Luo and that dragon. You. Pharaoh Crane widened his eyes. Yi Qing Luo and that dragon were hard to deal with. However, Dizun and Death God Castle's Castle Master were even more difficult to deal with. How could he keep an eye on her? However, Pharaoh he was not allowed to refuse. Yu had already leaped up and charged in the direction of Azure Dragon. A dense, evil aura emanated from his body. Yi Qing Luo shot a glance at Yu as her lips curled up, sneering as she flicked her fingers. The gourd flame fan that was originally aimed at the black-robed man suddenly closed. Shortly after, a mysterious light surrounded the glowing flame fan. The profound energy that soared to the sky was like a sharp blade as it shot straight towards Yu's face. When the evil Yin Qi collided with the bright red light, the air vibrated. The dark force collided. A huge burst of sparks exploded. Immediately after, a huge leopard's claw slammed down on his head. Yu immediately dodged to the side. He was hit in the chest by the remaining power of the Xian light. He grunted and took 2 steps back. He clutched his chest as his sinister eyes, which were suffused with black qi, stared deadly at Yi Qing Luo. Yi Qing Luo raised her eyebrows in ridicule. Her long and narrow eyes seemed to be wrapped in frost. Finally willing to make a move? I thought you were going to continue to be a coward. Yi Qing Luo, you will regret saying this. Yu's eyes turned cold as the black gas enveloped him completely. He suddenly let out a roar. The hand that was covering his chest suddenly exerted force and directly plunged into his own body. Blood gushed out and dyed his hand red. However, it was as if he couldn't feel the pain. The expression on his face contorted and became crazed. The corners of his mouth curled up into a horrifying sneer. What is he trying to do? Suicide. Yi Qing Luo was stunned by Yu's actions. Old Man Song said seriously, Little Luo, don't let your guard down. I think he's planning to use his own flesh and blood to cast some forbidden technique. Yi Qing Luo. Another forbidden technique. Other than using sinister methods, couldn't the Dark Palace fight them head-on? Yi Qing Luo pursed her lips as she looked straight at Yu. Forbidden technique, right? A forbidden technique which has been interrupted. Can it still be a forbidden technique? Her 5 fingers moved, and the gourd flame fan turned into streaks of neighborhood light as it entangled towards Yu from all directions, attempting to interrupt Yu's thoughts. But just as her attack was about to get close to Yu. Chapter 37:37. Bam! The profound light collided with the protective shield, causing the air to vibrate and shake violently. Yi Qing Luo frowned and was about to attack further. Suddenly, a huge monster suddenly appeared in front of her. A huge roar with a fishy smell hit her in the face. Yi Qing Luo even felt that the surrounding air had sunk into a burst of violent turbulence. She frowned, raised her hand, and used the glower flame fan to block the incoming hurricane. What was going on? In front of her was a huge wave of profound qi. She couldn't see clearly what was happening in front of her. She could only hear the sound of cold air being sucked in, mixed with a few exclamations. Following that, there were terrified screams. As the fluctuation in front increased, the wave in front of her also dispersed in all directions. Yi Qing Luo could vaguely see a huge beast crawling on the ground. That beast was half a head taller than the auction building. Its huge body slightly swayed and brought along a hurricane, which could send people flying at any time. The beast raised its head and roared. The sound was deep and deafening. Even the ground began to shake with that howl. That disgusting stench was emitted from the beast in front of her. What kind of monster was this? Was it the same as the fake white dragon's white fang, a corpse puppet? No. In his mind, Old Man Song very quickly gave a negative answer. That is the forbidden technique that this old man spoke of, using one's own flesh and blood and strength to create dark beasts to fight alongside one's own. Dark attribute beast? Yi Qing Luo had never heard of this kind of beast and could only guess based on the surface. Could it be this huge monster is a battle tool created by Yu Ji using his own flesh and blood? You can say that. Old Man Song said, this is completely different from a corpse puppet because it belongs to the illusory category. That beast can cause huge damage to you, but your attack is like hitting the fog, it doesn't hurt or itch. Yi Qing Luo's pupils contracted. So exaggerated? It seems that the other party is determined to succeed in this operation. Old Man Song said solemnly, you have to be careful. During the conversation with Old Man Song, that huge beast had completely taken shape. As the beast raised its claws, it landed heavily on the ground. The surrounding hurricanes and flying sand were all swept away in all directions. In Yi Qing Luo's line of sight, there appeared a gigantic. She couldn't tell what kind of wild beast it was. It looked like a tiger, a lion, and a leopard. Everything was alike, yet nothing was alike at all. All in all, it could be summed up with one word: ugly. It was extremely ugly. She had seen countless species of magical beasts. It was his first time seeing such an ugly beast. However, no matter how ugly it was, it could not conceal the powerful aura emitted from the beast. It was awe-inspiring, as if it was above the 9 heavens. That arrogance, the momentum of looking down on the world. It was definitely not inferior to the 4 great saint beasts. Roar! That wild beast faced Yi Qing Luo and opened its mouth to let out a deafening roar. The air surged, and the ground shook. Yi Qing Luo expressed she did not feel the domineering aura of a wild beast's provocation. She only felt the thick breath of a wild beast. That roar came down. His mouth was filled with the stench of blood and stench. It was disgusting. Yi Qing Luo felt that her stomach was extremely uncomfortable. Chapter 37-38. Suddenly, a ray of green light flashed past her eyes. A sturdy shield appeared in front of her. Following that, the stench also dissipated. It was the green dragon. The green dragon coiled its body and blocked in front of her, blocking the beast's turbid air. It enveloped her completely under its protective shield. Roar! The beast roared ferociously as the powerful aura exploded from its body and gradually rose. Rumble! The surrounding buildings also collapsed under the roars of the wild beasts. Roar, roar, roar! The beast seemed to be afraid of the green dragon. After it realized that it was unable to attack Yi Qing Luo, it turned around and waved its claw towards the other side of the battlefield. A nearly 3 meters tall gigantic beast could cause the earth to quake and mountains to shake with just one claw. The ground cracked and collapsed. The violent force was like a tornado, sweeping up the crushed stones and soil on the ground, scattering in all directions. That overbearing power, it wiped out a group of cultivators in a matter of minutes. The crushed stones that splashed out entered the cultivators' bodies and took away their lives directly. Its power was so strong that it made one fearful. For a moment, the auction was filled with wails. When the cultivators from various powerhouses saw this beast, they thought of that white dragon monster which had been slashed. Apparently, this beast in front of them was much more powerful than that white dragon monster. They didn't even have a chance to retaliate. Were they really going to? Doomed today. Everyone's mood instantly fell to the bottom of the valley. The atmosphere of despair filled the air. Roar! The beast was very satisfied with everyone's fear towards it. Accompanied by Yu Ji's cold laughter, the beast suddenly leaped up and flew into the sky. That huge body was extremely agile. With this leap, He jumped several zhang high into the air. The hurricane that was stirred up by his body carried the momentum of a tempestuous wave, and it forced the surrounding profound practitioners to fly backwards. Screams came from everyone's mouths. After the beast leaped up, it quickly rushed down in their direction. Heavens! Is this beast trying to crush us to death? Quick! Spread out! Help! Help! The crowd watched as the beast's huge body fell like a huge meteorite. A majestic and thick dark force followed. The entire sky was filled with violent, profound energy. Like a tide, it was unstoppable. A single monster was enough to annihilate all the elites from the major forces. What kind of terrifying organization was this? Those profound practitioners who were sent flying didn't even have the chance to dodge. They could only look on helplessly as the huge beast charged towards them. Boom! Ka-ka! Ka-cha! The huge explosion was deafening. A berserk power swept out. Even in the air, there seemed to be cracks appearing. The space trembled, and a surging wave of energy slammed into everything in the surroundings. Everyone's hearts were in their throats. Fear and despair before death took over his entire heart. However, under this earth-shattering explosion of power, none of them felt their lives slipping away. The feeling of surviving made everyone feel both shocked and joyful. They widened their eyes and looked at the sky full of dark rays in confusion. Not far from them, the enormous monster smashed into the group of black-robed men. The ground caved in as a result of the monster's attack. A huge pit was created. Many black-robed men were smashed into pieces. What was going on? Wasn't that monster smashing them?